I have a social experiment. Serious answers only. And this is only for people who have seen Bigfoot or Sasquatch. We're gonna do this my way. Kind of like a police lineup. Is this what you saw? How about this? How about this? Perhaps this. You only saw the left side of it? Turn right. Take your time. Is this who you saw? Bro, what is this? Come on, man. Come on. Why are we making... Who made this? Why is he kinda...
What in the hell is going on in your world?
Who made this one? Why is he kinda... Why is he kinda... Who made these two? And these two are the same species, too. Who made these two, bruh? He looks like frickin' Torbjorn.
Torbjorn, ready to work!
The reason why I'm asking this is because today we are going to be going through human evolution. That's right. Hi,
Hello.
I'm Ashley Sue, the host of The Big Breakdown. This episode is a special one. It is part 2 of the Bigfoot Breakdown series, which is where, you guessed it, we break it down. In today's episode, I am going to be breaking down human evolution and the connections with Bigfoot. This is a theory that Bigfoot somehow came from human evolution. I did a lot of research. I actually filmed this video a couple weeks ago, but I was unhappy with it and decided to study more. Also, I have a Dr. Pepper and cream soda. I brought it on because it's going to be a really, really long video. You know, it kind of strays from the whole Bigfoot topic, I'm not going to lie. This is mainly going to be me talking about human evolution, and then at the end reading some Reddit threads. Now, this is all just a theory, not factual. Entertainment purposes only, strictly speculation. Thinking out loud, let's get right into it. A lot of people do not believe evolution is real, whether it's religious reasons or you just don't believe in science. I'm not trying to change your mind if this applies to you, but I just wanted to clear some things up about evolution. First of all, the question I hear a lot is, if evolution is real, why aren't there chimpanzees in the forest turning into humans right now? Well, let's think about this for a minute, okay? I want to show you something. Look at this. What does this tell us? Our last common ancestors with chimpanzees was 7 to 8 million years ago. We made the split. We split. Humans kept going until we got to where we are today. And no, this was not a straight line like, you know, many people think of evolution. It's a branching tree. It's an intricate web. Chimpanzees evolved into modern chimpanzees. Sorry, I feel like that's a lot of attitude. I'm not trying to be like rude about it. Let me start over. Chimpanzees evolved into modern chimpanzees. They don't need to be turning into humans. They can't just look in the mirror one day and decide to be human the next, and decide their next generation is going to be human. That's not how evolution works. It took us millions of years to become what we are today. And we evolved into humans because we had to. We had to adapt in order to survive. Chimpanzees are able to live in the forests as chimpanzees. They have adapted well to the environment that they are already in. They're not human. They are chimpanzees. Different species. No. So let's talk about human evolution for a very long time. I have a lot to cover, and I know this is supposed to be related to Bigfoot. If you are here for Bigfoot, I apologize. I got so caught up in the history of humanity, and I found it very, very interesting. I just couldn't stop. I really couldn't. I have to talk about this. People need to know what I now know. I mean, maybe you already know. I don't know. I didn't know. It's really cool. This is going to be a very long video, like I've said before. Settle in, buckle up, get your brain focused, laser focused, and let's talk about the history of us. Before we go over, you know, where Bigfoot comes in, I want to go over human evolution. If you're already really familiar with it and just want to skip straight to the Bigfoot theory part, I'll put a timestamp where you can do that. All right, here we go. Evolution is a theory itself. It is based on fossils that have been discovered around the world. A very loose timeline has been made. There are still many plot holes. Even in the middle of the human evolution, there's a period called the muddle in the middle. Scientists call it that because it is just so complicated that things just get kind of like, I don't know, because it's so complicated. And there's not enough evidence to make a perfect timeline. And there probably never will be. Before I answer where humans came from, I'm going to bring it back a bit to where life started. I kind of want to try talking like a Should I try talking like a documentary person? Hang on. Let me try this for a sec. Cut to a picture of like the ocean or something. Do you know that there are lakes at the bottom of the ocean? Lakes form underwater. Lakes that are so dense, if you try to lower a submarine into them, the submarine will bounce off of the surface. How is all of this possible? Why are there trampolines made of water underwater? What? Brine pools. Brine pools are deep sea craters that are filled with extremely salty water. The salty water is able to remain separate from the rest of the ocean, leaving these beautiful yet deadly lakes occupying the deepest depths of the ocean. I can't do it anymore, I can't. The temperature of the water is higher, and the acidity level is higher too. How do these lakes form though? In the Arctic, they form with sea ice. As seawater freezes, salt is left behind. The salt deposits accumulate on the seabed in craters, where they dissolve in the water. Because the salt dissolves into this lake, the water becomes denser, which is why brine is able to sink and accumulate at the bottom of these lakes. Dissolving salt beds, hydrothermal circulation, or remnants of ancient seas can also form these salt beds. And I believe there are only 3 areas in the world where these brine pools have been found: the Gulf of Mexico, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Red Sea. But how are they deadly? The high salt concentration can be 3 to 8 times higher than typical seawater. The area between the normal water and the brine pool is known as a chemocline. I don't know how to pronounce them, I apologize, which traps the toxic water below. There is a near total lack of dissolved oxygen in the brine pools, which creates an anoxic environment, which basically just means there's an absence of oxygen. The lack of oxygen, high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide and methane make the brine pools deadly. Creatures who unfortunately make their way into these brine pools do not make it out. Their bodies pretty much go into shock. They suffocate. They die, left in the bottom of an underwater lake, completely preserved for years too. It's crazy. And the most fucked up part, shrimp will literally camp out these brine pools. They will stay on the border of the brine pool and the seawater, right at the edge. They will wait for a fish or another creature to make their way in, and once they are affected by the toxic water, the shrimp will jump in, snatch the creature, and jump out fast enough that they're not affected by it. What the fuck? Camping at the brine pools is crazy fucking work. This shit is crazy. They're using it as a trap. Shrimp are learning too much. We need to stop them. So why am I telling you this? Scientists believe that life on Earth may have started in a similar way. You see, several creatures are unable to live in the brine pools, obviously. There are, however, bacteria and I don't know what that means. I don't know what that word, I don't know how to pronounce that word. They thrive in the brine pools, so there is life that's able to live in the brine pools. They thrive in the interface layer. There's a chemical gradient that fuels an entire ecosystem. Instead of sunlight, the ecosystem thrives on chemosynthesis. Scientists study the microbial communities and geochemical gradients in brine pools to understand how life can survive in other harsh conditions, like on a different planet, which is really freaking cool. Or right here on Earth, billions of years ago. Now, there are a few theories on how life itself started. Earth used to be an uninhabitable planet, but one day, 3.7 billion years ago, there was a chemical reaction. A chemical reaction that created life. This could have been just a basic chemical reaction, or a chemical reaction that happened in a membrane contained, which started life. So then how did life keep growing? RNA could copy itself. And life could have, started reproducing that way. Don't ask me the science behind it, because I don't know. That's just what Google said. So, there are these thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. Even today, you can see the vents completely surrounded by all forms of life. Plants, algae, crustaceans, fish, etc. The place where life was may be born. In the beginning, life inhabited just the seas. Life on land would not exist for a long time. Life in the ocean theoretically started off as single-celled organisms. They are called prokaryotes, the first living organism on Earth. Prokaryotes are also known as LUCA, or the last universal common ancestor. Crazy shit. All life on Earth descended from prokaryotes. Am I pronouncing that right? Any word I pronounce wrong is not my fault. Okay, it is my fault. Okay, from now on, every word I pronounce wrong, just pretend I pronounced it right. They existed nearly 4 billion years ago and were capable of reproduction, energy intake, and environmental interaction. Instead of staying a single-celled organism or unicellular organism, it would develop into a multicellular organism. And so on and so forth. And want to skip a few? 99, 1000? Don't ask me the science behind anything, dude. Don't ask me the science behind anything because I don't know. Did you know that humans have over 200 types of cells? That's cool. That's cool. Anyway. Doesn't matter. Over time, there was bacteria, algae, fungi, and life. In the Ediacaran era, which was 635 to 541 million years ago, most of life was sessile, which means it was unable to move on its own, kind of like plants. And then it evolved. There was a time period known for its explosion of diversity, the Cambrian explosion, occurring approximately 541 to 530 million years ago. This was a rapid evolutionary event that produced most major animal phyla, body plans in the sea. It was like a biological big bang, bro. A sudden surge in biodiversity, where the rise of the first predators, arthropods, and hard-shelled organisms began. This event was most likely triggered by increased oxygen levels and environmental changes. The sea was full of life. Sea creatures ruled the planet. But how did they develop in a way that would make survival on land possible? There are many important transitional fossils that we know about that explain how our ancestors developed over time. For example, bones. The first steps of vertebrates had to exist somewhere. These boys didn't even have bones, bro. They need bones. They had to develop bones. There are fossils of chordates we have found that show the early stages of backbones, dude. Dude, we found the early stages of backbones, dude. Your spine from a chordate, bro. Structural support. Throughout time, there have been several examples of exaption. Exaption or co-option is the process by which a trait evolves for one function but is later repurposed for a new, different function. Exaptions are very cool. One of the coolest things I learned while researching all of this. Basically, a species develops a trait for a certain function. For example, lungs. Did you know that lungs are an ancestral trait? An ancestral trait is a characteristic inherited from a common ancestor that is found in all of its descendants. Taillessness, is that a word? Taillessness is also an example of an ancestral trait. Why are there sirens? So why would a fish or sea creature develop lungs? Surely it can't look in the mirror one day and decide to be able to breathe the next day. No. This process takes time, and lungs actually were not developed to be able to breathe air initially. This was just a perk.
That's my George Kennedy. I brought him here as a perk. And that's also why he can't hit.
Lungs were originally swim bladders, air sacs, that are also called buoyancy organs. Most bony fish have swim bladders. It contains gas, usually oxygen. It allows a fish to maintain its depth without floating or sinking to the bottom. Some bottom-dwelling and deep-sea bony fish do not have these air sacs. Sharks, skates, and rays are examples of some sea creatures that also do not have air sacs, which means they usually have to stay in motion to avoid sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Having this lung prevents that. Now, over time, fish that had this lung developed eventually became able to get on land. It took time for these fish to be able to do this. Not only did their lungs have to develop, but but their muscles and bones had to develop too. Fish that were able to survive on land had to be able to prop themselves up, carry their own body weight, had to have flexible necks and enough strength to carry them around. This was essential for their survival, to be able to evade predators and hunt prey. Over time, their muscles grew stronger. Their structural support developed. Fisheropods are examples of transitional creatures that showed us how fins developed into limbs. From then on, there were tetrapods, creatures with 4 limbs, or have lost their limbs through evolution, but came from a tetrapod. From then on, life developed. Did you know that Earth has gone through 5 different mass extinction events? Not just the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. There are others. Each time, a huge percentage of life on Earth was wiped out. But after each event, life persevered. Life adapted. Life fought back. Wouldn't it be so weird if a mass extinction event happened tomorrow and wiped out a majority of the Earth's living species? Which creatures would survive? How long would it take for life to go through evolution and become human again? But there's no guarantee they would be human. What would they be exactly? Would they find someone's iPhone billions of years later and think it's a device left behind by aliens? Everything we have left behind is in ruins. Everything from us would be like alien to them, like the pyramids. Would they be able to access TikTok? Would they see my drafts? Would they subscribe to my YouTube channel? Would you? Would you subscribe? Will you subscribe? Please? Let's skip ahead a few years. After the extinction of the dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, mammals ruled the world. I just don't really want to talk about dinosaurs right now. Let's just skip to it. It is said that one of the earliest known primates, the Archibus, had developed nails instead of claws, which was an adaptation that improved the sensitivity of touch. I just thought that was an interesting adaptation. If you're wondering where, nails came from, because sometimes I think about that sometimes. Speaking of nails, I own a press-on nail business, B-Claws. If you would like to purchase press-ons, please buy from me and support my small business. Okay, let's move on. Guilt trip's over. Around 23 million years ago, the earliest fossils of apes appeared. The Proconsuls is an early ape, another transitional creature between the older monkey family and new lineage of humans. They lived in Africa. They had no tail and more flexible limb joints, which leads us to a time where Earth was really the planet of the apes. There were over 30 genera of apes, bro. The Earth was covered in trees. Lush forests were perfect for large apes to thrive. It's said that 9 to 10 million years ago, we took the split from gorilla and chimpanzees. It kind of depends on who you ask, though. I saw a diagram that said hominins took the split between chimpanzees and bonobos around that time, and gorillas split off earlier. I don't know. There are a lot of different. It just depends. Let's just do ballpark. 7 million years ago, the climate became colder. Forests retreated. Grasslands opened up. Deserts appeared. The world was changing, and as time went on, apes were losing their environment, their home. Apes were forced to adapt, like life always does. We gotta have a little meeting.
Boy.
Time out, coach talk. Now there's gonna be a lot of scientific names that I drop here in a minute. It's gonna seem scary. It's gonna seem like a lot to remember. It was a lot while I was researching, but you will get used to it once we're in deep. Basically, scientific name is 2 words, right? The first word is considered the genus, the second word is considered the species, like Homo sapien. You guys recognize that, right? That's you. That's what you are. That's your scientific name. Homo is the genus, sapien is the species. So there's going to be different species within a genus, okay? I'm going to be dropping a lot, so I just wanted to warn you ahead of time. Out of breath from just talking. Sahelanthropus chidensis, alright, is an ancient human species. Now, I forgot to print a picture of our beloved Sahelanthropus chidensis, but this is Aurorantuganensis, and I feel like it's pretty similar. I'll have pictures up, but do you recognize this? Is this Bigfoot to you? Just thought I would give a name to a face, because I kind of just threw them at you earlier. So I'll I'll call them out when we get to them. How does that sound? Now, Sahelanthropus tugensis. I also made a diagram. So I put together, and I'm really proud of this, it took me a really long time. I put together a diagram. The x-axis is how many millions of years ago. The y-axis is brain capacity. I stole that idea from this chart, but I wanted to make my own with all of the species that I researched. So I, took pictures of their skulls and put them on the chart too, so that it's kind of like a reference as to how things kind of changed. It just kind of helps me, but yeah. So Sahelanthropus tugensis. It is estimated that they lived 6 to 7 million years ago. They're thought to be the earliest known member of our evolutionary family. They are dated to 7 million years ago in the Miocene. In 2001, a fossilized skull was discovered in the sands of Chad. Since the only fossils of Sahelanthropus tugensis we have are that of the skull, we cannot gather a lot of information on how they lived, but we can gather enough to speculate on how they lived. It's theorized that their diet consisted of leaves, fruits, seeds, roots. Hey, did that rhyme? Leaves, fruits, seeds, roots, nuts, and insects. Although the teeth we have found are really, really worn, we're not able to study them accurately. So, you win some, you lose some. So these were the first early humans or hominins diverged from apes. They have two defining anatomical traits: small canine teeth, and they were walking upright on 2 legs instead of walking on 4 legs. Now, their brain was about the size of a grapefruit. Their faces still bore heavy brow ridges and a projecting jaw. They're interesting because they have a human-like placement of the skull in relation to their body. At the base of the skull, there's a hole where the spinal cord connects to the brain. In quadrupeds, the opening normally sits at the back of the skull, so their heads extend forward from a horizontal spine. In humans, the skull sits directly on top of the spinal cord, which is similar to how Sahelanthropus tugensis, that's what their skull had. They had that hole at the bottom, so its head rested above its body, not in front of it. So that's how we can gather that it was kind of bipedal. It's not thought to be habitually bipedal. It's speculated to be able to walk upright at least part of the time. Now, because during this time apes were losing the forest, like how we talked about earlier, they had to make up for that loss. Instead of depending on trees or forests for survival, they began to make huge steps. Literally, they became bipedal. They had to make up for changes in the environment. Standing gave our ancestors an advantage because in these grasslands, they would be able to stand up and get a greater lookout distance. Their thermoregulatory advantages were important due to the loss of trees. So the less of their body being exposed to sunlight at a time, the better. Their brains also got bigger. Did you know that chimpanzees can also use tools? Did you know that? They've been seen using spears made out of tree branches to hunt. Really puts things into perspective on how smart they are, which I will bring up a lot because Bigfoot is known to be very smart. The postural feeding hypothesis
Yeah, boy.
is an ecological model for the evolution of bipedalism. Anyway, whatever. Basically, they stand up to grab fruit from a tree or whatever. That's the postural feeding hypothesis, and they just use that posture for the rest of the time. We are moving on to our good old buddy Auroran tugenensis. Now, this guy is thought to have existed from 6 to 5.8 million years ago. That's the range that I found. Paleontologists discovered Auroran tugenensis remains in the Tugen Hills of Kenya, where the name comes from, tugenensis, Tugen Hills. No, I'm saying only a handful of bones have been found, including a femur. The shaft of the bone was thickened in a way that suggests it regularly bore the weight of a body balanced over 2 legs, so it stood. Also, I totally forgot, but I showed you guys the graph I made earlier, but what I was even more excited about was I made these little icons for each one as well. Well, not each one, I didn't have that much time.
Hello!
But for most of them. I made little icons. Sahelanthropus chidensis. I wasn't really sure what to have their little thing be, so it's just a gold. It's just a gold thing. Because they were first place, right?
Preview.
First place gold medal.
Preview.
And our buddy Aurorantuganensis. I don't even think we have a skull of Aurorantuganensis, if I'm not wrong. So, he does not get an icon, he gets this bubble question mark. Hopefully, Aurorantuganensis, we find your skull. We find your head. Find your head soon. Its shape hints at the pull of muscles used for an upright stride, but it still had features used for climbing, which means it was both a walker and a climber. Individuals of this species were usually the size of a chimpanzee. They had small teeth with thick enamel, similar to modern humans. Since this species had both human and ape-like traits, it was named Aurorantuganensis, which in the local language means original man in the Tugan region. So far, it is the only species in the genus Auroran. It is speculated based on teeth that they mainly ate like a plant-based diet, probably consisting of leaves, fruits, seeds, roots, nuts, and insects, the rhyme we had earlier. You're gonna see a trend because literally for the first half of this, all the freaking species are eating leaves, fruits, seeds, roots, nuts, insects, okay? Look, when I was looking up pictures of each species, like, you're gonna find the same picture over and over and over again because we don't have a lot of freaking recreations, so this could be totally wrong, but Ardipithecus cadabra, they could have looked like this. My bad, guys. My bad. I only picked pictures that had clear faces so you guys could tell me what Bigfoot looked like to you. Anyway, the most complete remains of Ardipithecus were found in the early 1990s in what is now Ethiopia. Given the name Ardi, who lived around 4.5 million years ago, she was small, around the same height as the shoulder of a modern child, and weighed a little more than a household pet. Her skeleton resembled that of an ape. She had features like long, curved hands, indicating that she had climbing abilities. Her arms and shoulders were powerful and flexible. However, she was not a knuckle walker. Her wrists lacked the locking mechanism used by four-legged apes. Her pelvis was shaped in a way that allowed her to balance her weight when standing upright and was still flexible enough for climbing. Her legs were angled inward beneath her body, which is an early adaptation for bipedalism. She also had an opposable big toe. The rest of her foot was beginning to stiffen. These features show that Ardi had the ability to climb and forage in the canopy, but also walk upright to cover ground, which were both abilities that were needed to survive in this changing environment. This would also be the first time where diets changed. Because the forests were disappearing and ancient humans of species were beginning to rely on open areas for survival, that meant they had to find other food. Instead of leaves and fruits collected from the trees, they began eating seeds, roots, and possibly small animals. There's a new one thrown in there now. Now, another interesting detail about Ardipithecus was that they had much smaller canines than modern apes. Males in modern ape species compete for dominance, and they use these large canine teeth. This suggests that Ardipithecus, the males, were likely less aggressive. This could be evidence of a shift in behavior, where brute force was beginning to matter less, and shared parenting could have begun to emerge. Now, Ardipithecus has two species, and the one I showed you, which was allegedly Ardipithecus cadabra, but it looks like Lucy, doesn't it? Cadabra lived between 5.8 and 5.2 million years ago, and like we talked about, they were bipedal and had a similar body size to like a modern chimpanzee. Now, cadabra is only known in the fossil record by a few post-cranial fossils and sets of teeth. Now, the teeth of cadabra are unique based on the dental wear pattern. The back teeth of cadabra are larger than a chimpanzee's, but its front teeth are narrower. This suggests that most of the chewing was done in the back of the mouth. This type of chewing would be ideal for hard-to-eat foods like fibrous nuts. The faunal evidence found suggests that the early humans there lived in a mixture of woodlands and grasslands and had plenty of access to water like lakes and springs. Paleoanthropologists named species Ardipithecus cadaba, cadaba meaning oldest ancestor in the Afar language. Now, the second species of Ardipithecus is Ardipithecus ramidus, which lived 4.4 to 4.2 million years ago. They were first reported in 1994, and in 2009, they announced the finding of Ardi. The team who found Ardi have uncovered over 100 fossils of Ardipithecus ramidus. The name came about because ramid means root in the Afar language of Ethiopia and refers to the closeness of the species to the roots of humanity, and Ardi means ground or floor. Now, the teeth of ramidus are different from cadaba because the enamel was neither thick nor thin. If the enamel was thick, it would mean tough, abrasive foods were eaten. If the enamel was thin, it would mean softer foods like fruit were eaten. The wear pattern and incisor size suggest ramidus was not a specialized frugivore. Ignore that. But they also probably avoided tough foods, since they did not have the heavy chewing specializations of later Australopithecus species. Alright, next we have up is Kenyanthropus platyops. Kenyanthropus platyops. Now, this is, I think, the only species with the genus Kenyanthropus, and they are pretty mysterious. Now, I think I have a couple pictures. When I searched up Kenyanthropus platyops, these are the pictures that showed up. It is giving. Why are they modeling like this? Crazy to me. We also have this one, and this guy comes up several times. So this is a very general, visual of Kenyanthropus platyops. It could be any one of those, really. Could be anyone, we don't know. Kenyanthropus existed 3.5 to 3.2 million years ago. There's not much known about this flat-faced, small-brained bipedal species living about 3.5 million years ago in Kenya. It sounds like I'm being harsh on good old Kenyanthropus, but that's how the Smithsonian described her. They really said flat-faced, small brain, bro. Crazy shit. Alright, it's interesting because the earliest fossil evidence known for a flat-faced human was around 2 million years ago, which is a significant shift in skull structure, and platyops over here had it. So that's kind of weird. That's the thing about evolution and finding fossils, is that sometimes weird things come up and it kind of throws everyone off. What do you mean? They inhabited Africa at the same time of Australopithecus afarensis, which you can see from my little diagram here. And it looks like they could have overlapped with Africanus and Barwell Ghazali too. But they don't name that. And platyops could represent a closer branch to modern humans because of the flat face, right? The molars were smaller than Australopithecus afarensis, which suggests that these two did not have to compete for food. They had different diets. It seems they were both preferably plant eaters, though. The name Kenyanthropus platyops means flat-faced human from Kenya. And there was a little drama between these two species, afarensis and platyops. It was thought that Australopithecus afarensis was the ancestor of the Homo species, and therefore modern humans. But because Kenyanthropus features the flat face and less pronounced brow ridges, now they feel like Kenyanthropus is more likely related to Homo. Some hot drama about Kenyanthropus is the only known skull from the feces. Not from the feces, oh my god. The only known skull from the species that was found was badly distorted. Scientists feel we need more evidence to place Kenyanthropus within our family tree, or that Kenyanthropus is no more than a variant of Australopithecus afarensis. Sizzling hot drama. girls are fighting. Holy shit. Alright, now we are moving on to Australopithecus. I think 6 species of Australopithecus. We are starting with Anamensis. And there are a lot of similar names, like there's Africanus, Afarensis, Anamensis. It's going to be confusing. But now this picture is either... This came up when I searched up Australopithecus anamensis, and it also came up when I searched Australopithecus africanus. So that could be them. Oh, this one came up too when I searched Australopithecus anamensis. Anamensis has this icon because the blue is because they were found by lakes, right? And the green is from... Well, I forgot why now, but this is the icon for Anamensis. Australopithecus anamensis. So this is not the one that was competing with Kenyanthropus. They lived 4.3 to 3.9 million years ago, allegedly. A new cranium announced in 2019, dated back to 3.8 million years ago, shows that Anamensis overlapped in real time with Australopithecus afarensis for at least 100,000 years. 100,000 years, which is crazy because my graph is wrong then. No, it's not. Okay, no, it's not. I was looking at Africanus. No, you can see Anamensis and Afarensis overlap a little bit. They had traits that are both found in apes and humans, which if you haven't noticed by now, it's really trendy in every single species we've covered so far.
Hello.
Probably the rest of them also. Holy shit. I feel like I just keep repeating myself. The upper end of the tibia, or shin bone, shows an expanded area of bone and a human-like orientation on the ankle joint, which suggests regular bipedal walking, supporting body weight one leg at a time. You know, like walking. Bipedal walking, okay?
Oh!
If you haven't noticed yet, we are going through several transitions when it comes to evolving bipedalism, right? You know, we just keep getting more and more bipedal as time goes on, okay? Each species we cover has developed bipedalism more and more, alright? Long forearms and features of the wrist bone indicate they probably climbed trees as well. The cranium combines some more ancestral features, like a protruding face and a long, narrow brain case. It had forwardly projecting cheekbones, similar to Paranthropus, which we have not talked about yet. They had thickly built, narrow jaws with their side rows of teeth arranged in parallel lines. This suggests they may have eaten hard, abrasive foods, but they were likely plant eaters in general. Fruits and nuts, you know the vibes. Now, the remains of Anamensis have been found where forests and woodlands grew around lakes. The name Australopithecus anamensis was used because Anam means lake in the Turkana language. We are on Afarensis now, which means I can show you this. Is it Lucy? Fuck, I got duped. I got fucking duped. Shit. I think this is Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. She's very famous. We love Lucy. I love Lucy. That's my girl. Australopithecus afarensis. They lived 3.9 to 2.9 million years ago. Paleoanthropologists have recovered more than 300 individuals. Holy shit. Yeah, so we're still in Africa. I don't think we leave Africa until Homo erectus. They survived for more than 900,000 years. 4 times longer than we have ever lived.
Hello.
More than that, more than 4 times longer. Shit. Afarensis children grew more rapidly after birth and reached adulthood earlier than modern humans, which means they required less time for parental guidance and socialization during childhood. This species had ape-like face proportions, a flat nose, strongly projecting lower jaw, and a brain case for a small brain, usually less than 500 cubic centimeters. And if you don't know, I think we are 1,300 cubic centimeters or so, a little more than a third. They had long, strong arms with curved fingers for climbing. They had small canine teeth and a body that stood on 2 legs and regularly walked upright. Now, they mainly had a plant-based diet, including, You know the routine. Leaves, fruits, seeds, roots, nuts, and insects. Also a common theme. We don't have many options or say in the matter. Wow. Oh, something new mentioned. Probably the occasional small vertebrates. Like lizards.
Hello.
Oh, that's not. And we know this based on their teeth. They are the longest lived and best known early human species. Job well done, afarensis. Making us all look bad. A famous afarensis is Lucy. So that's cool. So this is Lucy. Love Lucy. She's cool. Now, Australopithecus is said to be a bad bias. Bad Bigfoot ancestor choice. Poor choice. You'd have to be like, ish, to think that Australopithecus is an ancestor of Bigfoot. Oh! And I'll tell you why. Actually, I don't know. I watched a live stream from 2 years ago, I believe. And it was 3 people. But I watched the entire thing, see what their opinions were, like what species they think would be a good ancestor of Bigfoot. And I guess Australopithecus is not it. Not it. I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess. That's just what they said, though. Also, in that live stream, I found someone, Bumblebee, and I genuinely love her. Genuinely love her. She was spitting out fun facts the entire live. So, go check her out. She talks about a lot of cryptids and that kind of related stuff, which is what I kind of want to get into. And she's more of she was a believer of Bigfoot, but now she's not. So, I don't know where that leaves me. Because she's really freaking smart. So if she doesn't believe in Bigfoot, maybe, hey guys, maybe we should quit. Maybe we should call it quits. I would love to believe. That's why we're doing this. That's why I'm here at the end of the day. We're just talking. We're just thinking about this. We're talking about freaking... Are we still talking about... Okay, anyway. I think this is just Australopithecus in general. Okay, this is just Australopithecus. We're just talking about the genus. Now, there is speculation that they used tools at sites in modern-day Kenya and Ethiopia, some dating back to more than 3 million years. Animal remains with strange marks have been uncovered. They are straight, deliberate cuts. These cuts look like they have been made by something with sharp edges. However, no tools were found at the site. It seemed like someone had picked up broken stones and used them as makeshift blades. If this is true, it means that those stones were chosen for a reason, suggesting opportunistic behavior was being used, requiring patience and timing, waiting at a distance while lions fed, watching for vultures to signal fresh carcasses, or seizing a moment where a large predator had moved on. Purely speculation. One day, Australopithecus picks up a rock. Next day, Homo habilis crafts a handmade Damascus steel Viking sword with scabbard 36 inches, collectible, medieval, live-action roleplay, long replica, anniversary, Christmas wedding gift for men.
Huh?
Australopithecus making us all look bad. Okay, this is why Australopithecus is a bad bias. Bad bias for Bigfoot. The jaw, the way the cranium sits, and the smaller brain. They are also not known to have the sagittal crest that Bigfoot has. And the size. They were only like 4 to 5 feet tall. So that's why. That's why Nikki, I think her name was Nikki. I think it was Nikki, Tristan, and Bumblebee talking in that live. They were the first of our ancestors to walk as bipeds. Not just by occasion, like full-blown bipeds. They stood a little taller than a meter and weighed the same as a modern child. Their arms were long and their fingers curved. Their legs were elongated and sturdy. Their pelvises were shaped to support upright posture, and their spines curved to balance the weight of a vertical frame. Interestingly, pelvic changes that support upright walking also affected childbirth, allowing infants with slightly larger brains to be born. Youch! You got me fucked up. Australopithecus Africanus. We're moving on, baby. They existed 3.3 to 2 million years ago. I just know I'm gonna get canceled. So, like those little icons that I showed you guys. You know what? Let's just move on because I'm gonna get canceled for this icon. Now this, guys, please forgive me, but I made these icons so that I could have an easier time remembering them and what makes them unique from each other. Now let me tell you the story behind this icon, okay? 1924, the Twang child was found. Australopithecus africanus means southern ape of Africa. It took more than 20 years for the scientific community to accept Australopithecus as a member of the human family tree. That's kind of sad. I know what it's like to be the black sheep of the family. Okay, now Africanus had a rounder cranium housing, a larger brain, and smaller teeth. It also had relatively long arms and a strongly sloping jaw that juts out from underneath the brain case with a pronounced jaw. Now, based on their dental records, Africanus had a similar diet of fruit, plants, seeds, roots, insects. No, hey, new food dropped. Eggs. Cool. Now this is where I'm gonna get canceled. Interestingly, a giant African eagle hath killed the Twang child. And this information is under the What It Means to Be Human tab of the Smithsonian Museum website. So that's interesting. The Twang child was 3 years old when they died. We know the age because the first molars had only just begun to erupt through the gum. The root length has estimated the child's age at 3.3 years. This is speculation, but there were puncture marks found at the bottom of the Twang child's eye sockets. These marks could have been made by an eagle's sharp talons and beak. And to back that up, the presence of eggshells at the site and an unusual mixture of animal bones near the Twang child's skull suggest that this could have been a giant eagle attack. So that is what it means to be human. Wow. I didn't know. I didn't know that you didn't have a mom.
I didn't know. I didn't know. You didn't have a mom.
Anyway. Australopithecus sediba. Okay, so I made this icon. As you can see, there are 4 arrows pointing inward at sediba, and that is because you're about to find out. So, Australopithecus sediba existed 1.98 to 1.78 million years ago. Now, fossil skeletons from Malapa Cave are extremely complete. It is thought that scientists can see what entire skeletons looked like near the time Homo evolved. The teeth, length of the arms and legs, and the narrow upper chest resemble Australopithecus. Other tooth traits and the broad lower chest resemble humans. Transition time. They had relatively small premolars and molars, and facial features more similar to those in Homo. Now, an interesting thing about sediba is that they turn their feet inward, with their weight focused on the outer edge of the foot, which is an odd way of striding. Wouldn't you think so? It is speculated that upright walking could have evolved on more than one path during human evolution, and Bigfoot is known to have a different stride than we do. So, does this mean it's possible that another way of walking, Bigfoot style, was evolved separately during evolution? I'm just speculating. I just know Homo habiliensis would have speculated too. But that's why the icon looks like that, is because that helps me remember that they pointed their feet inward while walking, because the arrows point inward at. Now, this was also a very dramatic family tree placement. Scientists debated if sediba was descendant of Africanus or closely related to Homo. In the end, it was placed as a descendant, though. Got through with that. Let's see if I have pictures of sediba. I think I do. Alright, this is Australopithecus sediba. It's giving. Australopithecus garhi. Alright, another mysterious gal. At this point, I think I just ran out of ideas, but you'll see why this is the icon for Australopithecus garhi. Now, I never found a range for them. It just said they existed 2.5 million years ago. So that's all we got. Now, there's one fossil cranium, 4 other skull fragments, and a partial skeleton found nearby. Now, Australopithecus garhi are associated with some of the oldest known tools, along with animal bones that were cut and broken open with stone tools. This makes garhi one of the first to use stone tools and eat meat and bone marrow. Dude, how did they figure that out? I just think about that a lot. Like how do they know to open up the bone and eat bone marrow? How do you even know to do that? How did they know to do that? They are named garhi because the word garhi means surprise in the Afar language. So, one is a surprise party hat. Australopithecus Barrel-Ghazali, I don't know how to pronounce it, I apologize, is dated back to 3.5 to 3.6 million years ago, and this is the picture I have of Australopithecus Barrel-Ghazali. Australopithecus Barrel-Ghazali. We do not have a skull, unfortunately. Jaw and tooth bones were discovered in Chad. A mandibular fragment with 2 teeth was discovered in 2000. These were the first remains found of Australopithecus outside of southern and eastern Africa, which expands the geographic range of these hominins. Now, the name Barrel-Ghazali comes from the location where the fossils were found. Bar El Ghazal in Chad. Barrel-Ghazali. Guys, I'm so bad at it. And it seems drama with Barrel-Ghazali thickens. Its relationship to other Australopithecines is debated. Many believe it is closely related to Afarensis. Others believe it's a subspecies of Afarensis. Since there have only been teeth or jaw bones found, it's hard to place Barrel-Ghazali. Though comparing teeth to other Australopithecines suggests that their brain size would be similar to them. The tooth enamel is a similar thickness as well. Similar diet. Alright, guys, we're getting into Paranthropus territory. And also, I forgot to mention, I also color-coded this graph. So, pink is anything within the Sahelanthropus genus, which is the only one. This really light red color is for the genus Aurorin. There's only one. Orange is for Ardipithecus. There's 2. Yellow is for Kenyanthropus, which is only 1. Australopithecus is blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's only 6. There's 6 of them. Paranthropus is green. And there's 3. 3 Paranthropus. And then Homo is purple. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 species of Homo. Did you guys know that? Because I did not know that before researching this. Paranthropus was considered its own dead-end branch of Australopithecus for decades. Wait, let me look that up because am I doing this wrong then? Is Paranthropus its own genus? Not its own genus. Okay, so Paranthropus is... I don't think it's recognized as its own genus. It's not its own genus. So... some paleontologists think it's synonymous with Australopithecus, and it's sometimes classified of a subgenus of Australopithecus. So, but I already made the frickin' graph, so today they're Paranthropus. That's just how I see it. Were found in the early 20th century in Africa. Now, with Paranthropus, the sagittal crest stands out. It holds a robust jaw for raw vegetation. They were stocky and powerful, with broad faces, massive jaws, and enormous teeth. Their faces were shaped for grinding tough food. The molars were almost twice the size of modern human molars. So they had powerful jaws to grind tough material. They were chewing for probably hours. Holy shit, dude. They probably chewed like 50% of their lives, totally bogged. They spread widely across eastern and southern Africa, overlapping in time with several hominin species, including early members of the genus Homo. It is sad, but as the environment changed, they could not adapt, and the lack of available food gave them a disadvantage. Their anatomy was not suited for handling a varied diet. They struggled to process meat or softer foods. Somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million years ago, they disappeared. So Paranthropus lived for nearly 2 million years, and then they vanished completely, which is really freaking sad. So there are 3 species in the Paranthropus category, since it's not at the genus. Aethiopicus is a mysterious gal. Aethiopicus lived in between 2.7 to 2.3 million years ago. There have not been many remains found. The black skull, discovered in 1985, dates back to 2.5 million years ago. It shows that Aethiopicus had a strong protruding face, large megadont teeth, a powerful jaw, and a well-developed sagittal crest on top of the skull, indicating huge chewing muscles. Teeth studied suggest a largely vegetarian diet. And let's see Aethiopicus. Do I have a picture of Aethiopicus? I do. Oh, this is another picture of Aethiopicus. So keep that in mind. Yeah, that's Aethiopicus. And the fossil is really freaking cool too, I'm not gonna lie. Paranthropus boise. Now, Paranthropus boise, bro. What the fuck is this, bro? It's giving sitcom character introduction. Here's another one. A reused picture that I'm pretty sure I showed that exact picture earlier. I mean, same model, different camera angle, and hey, it's a new species, right? Paranthropus boise existed 2.5 to 1.15 million years ago. Now, boise differs from Aethiopicus by its large cheek teeth, molars and premolars. I don't know why they call it cheek teeth. Because, whatever, I'm not gonna think about it. Not my job. The flaring cheekbones gave Boise a very wide and dish-shaped face. This made a larger opening for bigger jaw muscles to pass through and support massive cheek teeth, 4 times the size of a modern human's. They had even larger teeth than Paranthropus robustus, a flatter, bigger-brained skull than Aethiopicus, the thickest dental enamel of any known early human. Holy shit. The species was given the name Nutcracker Man, for its big teeth and strong chewing muscles. Boise likely ate tough foods like roots and nuts, but dental microwear patterns on the teeth are more similar to living fruit eaters, meaning it could have chewed on tough foods, but evidence does not suggest they regularly did. Probably had a more diverse diet. Now let's see what do we got for Paranthropus boise, bro. Boise. Yes. So we got, I did that because of the teeth thing. They had the biggest, they had big teeth, larger than Paranthropus robustus, and what did it say, the thickest dental enamel of any known early human. So that's why I put the icon, there's teeth around it. Now we're talking about Paranthropus robustus, and for them, their icon is a freaking flexed bicep, because you'll see. Now, do I have any pictures of robustus? I do. Here's this one, looking a little melancholy. Do I have more? I do. Now, Robustus existed 2.27 to 0.87 million years ago. They had very large megadon cheek teeth with thick enamel and focused their chewing in the back of the jaw. Robust refers to tooth and face size, not the body size though. Damn, shots fired. Paranthropus means beside man. Robustus also had a diverse diet, not just eating tough foods, but also soft fruits, young leaves, insects, and meat. Stone tools have not been found near Paranthropus robustus remains. The studies of bone fragments show that they probably used bones as tools to dig in termite mounds. Pretty interesting. This species was once thought to represent male Australopithecus africanus, later determined to be their own species. Now, Aethiopicus, Boise, and Robustus share the genus Paranthropus, but not really. Because apparently it's not its own freaking genus. Apparently they're just Australopitheci. So I don't even know what I'm doing here anymore. What am I doing here? Now let's throw it back.
Hello.
2.6 million years ago, where Homo habilis emerged. That's right, Homo habilis. Do have pictures of Homo habilis. Here's one. I don't know why I printed all of these out, because I really could have just put an overlay on the video. I think I just wanted to be extra. Now for the icon, if you can't tell, those are stone tools behind Homo habilis, and we'll get into why I did that. Now they existed 2.5 to 1.4 million years ago. Because tools were found near fossilized Homo habilis remains, its name was earned, Homo habilis. The name means handy man. So, since they used tools, they had a brain capacity of 510 cubic centimeters. So we're kind of getting up there. Let's see, Homo habilis. Yeah, we're just getting a little bit above 500 cubic centimeters now. We were at 500 and below for the rest of the last species. The first Homo habilis fossils were found in the 1960s, and although they seem small and lightly built, they had the potential to evolve into what we are today. We have found stone tools that show just how smart Homo habilis was. Now, they had a slightly large brain case and smaller face and teeth than Australopithecus or older hominin species. Long arms and a moderately prognathous face contribute to more ape-like features. Homo habilis was once thought to be the earliest stone tool makers or users, but the earliest evidence of stone tools dates back to before the earliest evidence of Homo. So who? Ooh, it could literally be any one of us.
You know what's driving me nuts? It could literally be any one of us. Ooh. No, it couldn't. You're dressed like a hot dog.
They selected specific stones and struck them with precision to create sharp flakes and usable cores. This method of tool use is known as the Oldman tradition. They were simple in form, but revolutionary in purpose. They used tools specific for slicing flesh, chopping wood, cracking bones, and shaping plant materials. This proves that Homo habilis had the ability to plan ahead. They had to know that a situation would arise where they would need that specific tool. Cause and effect, these tools would make life a lot more efficient for Homo habilis. With these tools, they could butcher animal carcasses quickly, getting the meat before larger predators arrived. Hammer stones, they could break open bones to access the marrow. They could process tough plants, carve wood, and prepare hides for carrying or shelter. Fossil evidence shows that their thumbs allowed a stronger and more precise grip than any species before them. This obviously helped greatly with the making of tools. It's suggested that in this state of evolution, cultural inheritance was introduced. Passing this kind of knowledge, toolmaking, to future generations means there had to be communication. There was some level of communication there. To show someone how to make stone tools, whether it was through hand gesture, sounds, or some other form, it was there. From here, social life developed from this form of teamwork, a sense of identity as a part of a group. Studies on their teeth suggest that they were still adapted to chewing some hard foods. Their diet was flexible and versatile. However, they probably only ate tough foods when they needed to, not regularly. Routinely, there was beef when placing Homo habilis on our family tree. The name Homo habilis means handyman. Evidence shows that there is not one after the other in the genus Homo. It has been proven that several species of Homo existed at the same time for almost 500,000 years. Crazy shit. Homo ergaster. This is the icon I chose for Homo ergaster, and you'll see why. I do have some photos. Here's one. Here's two. Dude, these freaking scare me because why do the eyes look so real? And why are they looking into your soul? Homo ergaster lived between 1.9 and 1.3 million years ago, and they're also known as African Homo erectus. The core group of the species lived between 1.5 and 1.9 years ago. Some additional individuals extend their range to between about 700,000 and 2 million years ago. So, who knows? I just kept it at 1.9 to 1.3. A fossil jaw that was previously identified as Homo habilis was re-examined and reclassified as Homo ergaster. A Turkana boy is an important individual found in Kenya. He lived about 1.5 million years ago and was about 8 to 10 when he died. He was already 1.6 meters tall and could have reached 1.85 meters tall as an adult. He had a tall, slender body adapted for striding out across the savanna plains. He also had a more human-like face, with a nose that projected outward and a larger brain case. Another interesting specimen is a partial skull, discovered in 1969 in South Africa. The skull was found in a cave with many fossils of Paranthropus robustus. What are y'all doing in the cave, though? Together.
Hello.
What? Stone tools and burned bones were also found in this cave. It's theorized that the toolmaker was Homo ergaster. Burned bones, however, would be from a few things. Either Homo ergaster used fire here about 1.5 million years ago, or a natural fire could have burned the bones. The name ergaster is based on a Greek word meaning work. Workman was given to the name ergaster because of the large stone tools that were found near some of its fossils. Some people do not recognize Homo ergaster as a species and classify it as Homo erectus. Those who do not accept Homo ergaster consider this species to be the common ancestor of two groups of humans that took different evolutionary paths, Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Their brain size was around 860 cubic centimeters on average. So they're pretty cool. That's why I gave them the hard hat icon, is because their name means work. You know the drill. You've got the mystery icon because we don't know a lot about you, or I just can't think of anything. Homo georgicus. Let's see if I have photos of Homo georgicus. Here's one. Looks like an 80s photo shoot. Here's 2. 3. And they lived 1.8 million years ago. Again, there's no range, just as 1.8. That's what I went with. Now, Georgicus was located in the southern Caucasus region of the Republic of Georgia. Some treat Georgicus as a subspecies of Homo erectus, like ergaster. It is thought to be closely related or possibly a descendant of Homo ergaster, or possibly ancestor of Homo ergaster and Asian Homo erectus. Teeth, multiple skulls, and numerous postcranial bones have been found. They had small, robust skulls and habiline-like prognathic faces. I don't know what that means. Their upper limbs were Australopithecine-like, and their spines and lower limbs were more modern. They had a brain capacity of about 546 cubic centimeters. Their molars were large, and studies on the microwear show that they ate tough, fibrous plant foods. Their canines were surprisingly long. Crap. I should have made a friggin' vampire. Whatever. It's over now. It's gone. It's done. Now we're moving on to Homo rudolfensis. Yes, it might look sus now, but that you'll see why I did that. Now I do have some pictures of Homo rudolfensis. Here's one. Here's 2. Another one that just looks deep into your darkest pits of your soul. Dude, I'm so afraid of these. Like, Do not take me to a human evolution museum because I will freak the fuck out. I don't like it. I don't like I don't like mannequins. I don't really like, animatronics or whatever built that are like that big. Like, I don't trust them. I don't like them. Never take me to the wax museum because I'll freak the fuck out. Rudolfensis lived 2.5 to 1.5 million years ago. It only has one really good fossil. It has a brain case size of 775 cubic centimeters, above the upper end of Homo habilis brain case size. They were once considered Homo habilis, but because of the differences in the larger brain case, face, and larger molar and premolar teeth, they are now classified as Homo rudolfensis. Some scientists think they're actually a species of Australopithecine just with a large brain. Rudolfensis may have used stone tools to process their food. It's hard to place who made stone tools during this time since several species coexisted. And that was a short one, but basically, I think reading the description online was a bit messier, and that's why I made their icon that, is because placing them on the family tree was pretty messy because they used to be, Homo habilis, but then, people were like, hey, they're different this way, so it was just a lot. Which is true for all of them, technically, but this one just seemed messier than the rest for some reason. Don't remember. Homo mouritanicus. I don't know where I got this from, but it has been on my list since the beginning of researching it, and so I have it. So this is, this one, it might not even be worth mentioning, but we're going to mention it because it was on my list. Now, Homo mouritanicus, right? They are dated back to 1.2 to 0.6 million years ago. Another species that many think should be reclassified as Homo erectus. Later, they decided they could classify it as Homo erectus. They thought the species found were different enough that a new species was justified. Jaw is heavy. At the front, the profile is smooth and receding. There's no sign of a chin. The teeth are very large by modern standards. So, but, Homo erectus. I already know what icon this is because I have beef with Homo erectus. Let's see if I have any pictures. Do I not? Dude, I don't have any pictures of freaking Homo erectus. Homo erectus, they existed from 1.89 to 100,000 years ago. 110,000 years ago. Now, they descended from Homo habilis 2 million years ago, had a brain capacity of 1,000 cubic centimeters. This was around the time of the first intentional use of fire. Now, when they were discovered, fossils of Homo erectus was nearly indistinguishable from 21st century humans from the neck down. And early Homo erectus fossils are sometimes called Homo ergaster, the species we went over a little while ago. And they also lived the same time as Gigantopithecus, which is a species that a lot of people think is a ancestor of Bigfoot, but because it's, mainly plant eater and a knuckle walker and all this stuff, they're like, there's no freaking way. So apparently, Gigantopithecus is a bad bias. People only think it's an ancestor because of its size. Also, the location is a problem, because they would have had to leave Africa. You know what I'm saying? But they're like, aren't they an Asian ape? Like, and the orangutan is like a descendant of it? I don't know. Moving on. They were taller, often more than 1.5 meters in height, strong hips, long legs, and narrow torsos, built for efficient walking and running. This gave them endurance, which was essential to their survival. And they were the first hunters. They did not stay in Africa where they were born either. They moved around. They would walk farther, hunt longer, and adapt more deeply than any other species before them. For nearly 2 million years, they spread from Africa to Europe and Southeast Asia. Instead of relying on sudden bursts of speed, they practiced persistence hunting. They would pursue their prey over long distances. Most large animals were able to outrun them, but they could not cool themselves off as efficiently. Eventually, they would collapse from exhaustion, and Erectus would be right behind them. He's right behind me, isn't he? This is insanely scary, by the way. Erectus is the snail. This is insane, I just found this out. Erectus is the snail. They were also skilled tool makers. Hand axes were carefully crafted, and symmetrical multi-purpose tools used for butchering meat, digging for tubers, scraping hides, and shaping wood. Evidence suggests that they were forming structured groups, like organized hunting parties. With all of these skills, they were able to leave Africa. A slow and steady spread, carried out generation by generation. They were able to survive in different climates. For nearly 2 million years, Homo erectus was the most successful species of humans on Earth. It's also theorized that they gathered fire long before they learned how to make it. They could have carried embers from a lightning strike or fed a natural fire until it was under their control. Fire played a huge role in the evolution of humanity. Fire allowed the days to be longer. Instead of only operating at times the sun is out, it extends the amount of time in a day. They repaired and created tools, prepared food, and socialized near the fire, an area that predators would avoid. Gather in a safe space, forming bonds and sharing experiences. The fire gave everything so much more meaning. They could choose where to sleep. They could linger on the ground. They could remain in places that would be too cool if not for the fire. It could also be a helpful tool. Controlled burns could clear landscapes, allowing fresh growth to attract grazing animals. It could flush animals from hiding or make certain plants easier to harvest. Heated wood-hardened spears make effective weapons. The tall bodies and large brains of Erectus required a lot of energy. They ate meat and other types of protein that could be quickly digested to absorb nutrients faster, making more energy available faster. Homo erectus is probably the longest living Homo species, about 9 times as long as our own species have been around. Making us all look bad. Pithecanthropus erectus was its original given name, meaning erect ape man, but was later changed because that's wild. I'm just kidding. Now this is the muddle in the middle that I was kind of talking about. If you haven't caught on by now, when several species were existing at the same time, so it gets kind of confusing. And so the icon is puzzle pieces because Homo ergaster and Homo georgicus were like, they're like, just call him Homo erectus. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff that happens with Homo erectus where it's like everything is classified as Homo erectus until whatever. So that's why I made it like a puzzle, because all those pieces come together with Homo erectus. We are now talking about my favorite, Homo heidelbergensis. I'm just kidding. But seriously, why are these so much better looking than the other ones? Why did they do this? Whatever, we're not gonna think about it. Homo heidelbergensis is my favorite of all time. They existed, well, okay, it's kind of debated. There's evidence that suggests they could have been around 1.3 million years ago to 200,000 years ago. I don't think I put that on my diagram, did I? I did, okay. The reason why it's my favorite is because the name is cool. I just like the name. I will never not mention the goat Homo heidelbergensis. They had a very large brow ridge and a larger brain case and flatter face than older early hominin species. Their short, wide bodies were an adaptation to conserving heat. Okay, here's the shorter time span. 700,000 to 200,000 years ago. That is the main one. There has been evidence, like art and sculptures found, showing Homo heidelbergensis could visualize and manipulate the world in 3 dimensions. They possess the cognitive capacity not only for tool use and survival, but for symbolic thought, planning, and maybe even communication beyond practical needs. Homo heidelbergensis is also known for their ability to work as a team. Archaeological evidence suggests they were the first humans to truly master large-scale organized hunts. Butchered remains of horses and red deer have cut marks made by stone tools indicate multiple hunters worked together to hunt and process their prey. Several perfectly preserved wooden spears, each over 6 feet long, that had been found by archaeologists hint at coordinated hunting tactics. This level of organization suggests communication far beyond the simple calls or gestures of other early hominin species. Otherwise, how would they be able to pull this off? It is also evidence that Homo heidelbergensis lived in big groups, where roles may have been given to individuals. Skilled spear throwers, scouts who tracked animal movements, elders who remembered migration patterns or seasonal changes, and more. They constructed simple shelters from wood, stone, and animal hides. They were widespread. Remains have been found across Africa, Europe, and as far as China. Due to their hunting groups, this means that food had to be shared, which would ultimately strengthen the bond between humans, between members. They had to trust and depend on each other for survival. They were the first early human species to live in colder climates. They controlled and used fires, used hunting spears, routinely hunted large animals. There's evidence of controlled fire burnings or early fireplaces, fire-altered tools, and burnt wood dating back to 790,000 years ago. It is speculated that these fireplaces were places members could gather for socialization, comfort, warmth, food sharing, information sharing, and safety from predators. Wild deer, horses, elephants, hippos, and rhinos with butchery marks on their bones have been found at heidelbergensis sites. What the hell? Elephants, hippos, and rhinos, bro. Now, another interesting find is the Pit of Bones, found in northern Spain, dating back to 400,000 years ago. The bones of roughly 30 heidelbergensis individuals had been deliberately thrown inside a pit. Alongside the remains was a single, well-made symmetrical hand axe. Why did they do this? Was this some kind of ritual? What have they done? What did they summon? Dude, I don't know, but friggin' Homo heidelbergensis. Why? The icon I made for Homo heidelbergensis is a symbol of their teamwork, because they were really good at teamwork. That's why I made that icon. Now we're on to Floresiensis. When I googled Homo floresiensis, this picture came up, but I'm pretty sure this is just a Neanderthal. Homo floresiensis lived between 190,000 to 50,000 years ago. So we're getting closer, guys. We're getting closer. Now, in the year 2003, archaeologists discovered a tiny skeleton, a little over 3 feet tall, with delicate bone and a skull no larger than that of a chimpanzee. They assumed it belonged to a child at first, but it was actually an adult Homo floresiensis. The island of Flores, Indonesia, is the only place so far that we have found this species of human. The fossils date back to 100,000 and 60,000 years ago. Stone tools made by this species date back to 190 and 50,000 years ago. So they stood at a little bit more than 3.5 feet tall, and they weighed 55 pounds. Its brain was roughly the size of a grapefruit. Although its brain was small, this species was intelligent, capable, and resourceful. They had tiny brains, large teeth for their small size, shrugged forward shoulders, no chins, receding foreheads, and relatively large feet due to their short legs. Somehow this species made its way to Flores, an island surrounded by a treacherous sea. They could have made it on simple rafts or floating vegetation they clung to, and it is theorized that their size is related to living on an island, where size becomes a matter of survival. This is because resources are scarce. The larger your body is, the more food and water you require. Over generations, many species shrink or grow to fit their environment. In this case, Floresiensis went through island dwarfism. Some other species have shrunk to live on islands too. Elephants become pygmies, deer grow smaller, and even predators shrink to conserve energy. At Liangbois Cave, where the first skeleton was found, an array of stone tools was also uncovered. Carefully crafted flakes, points used to butcher animals and process plants. This suggests Homo floresiensis was capable of complex thought. They also found the remains of the extinct stegodon near stone tools, proving that floresiensis hunted animals many times their own size. A useful skill due to the other large animals inhabiting the island. They survived for hundreds of thousands of years, with evidence suggesting that they may have survived as recently as 50,000 years ago. It's not clear how they got to the island. The nearest island is 6 miles away, across treacherous sea. Now, Homo floresiensis is named after the island they were found on, and they also gained the nickname the Hobbit because of their size. Scientists believe that floresiensis descended from an early population of Homo erectus, meaning they existed at the same time as Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. How did they disappear then? Scientists believe that volcanic eruptions or climate change was the cause of their extinction. Others think Homo sapiens on nearby islands were the cause. The icon, as you can see, we've got some oars. So now you guys know that's why I did that, is because they made it to the island. Frickin' Homo naledi, dude. Homo naledi is a species that amazes me. They existed 335,000 to 236,000 years ago. In 2013, a team of cavers crawled into a narrow underground chamber so cramped they could barely squeeze through. What they found in that cave, scattered across the ground, were bones belonging to a species no one had seen before. Homo naledi. Homo naledi had a small, delicate frame. Its skull was tiny, its brain no larger than that of an orange, about a third the size of ours. The scary part? The bones were not scattered randomly. They were clustered in ways that suggested deliberate placement. No signs of habitation in the cave. These cavers had come across a graveyard. Okay, I guess it's not that scary. I just find this unsettling. I don't know why. I think it's also scary that the cave these people had to get through was so small. They had to find specialized young women to go through this cave to recover all the bones because they were the ones who were able to fit. Go women. Making us all look bad. Anyway, this finding was shocking. More than a dozen individuals had been left in the rising star chamber. The bones found were dated back between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago, the same time when Homo sapiens and Neanderthals exist. So they stood at about 4.5 feet tall, weighing less than 100 pounds. They possess traits that are Australopithecine-like in the pelvis and shoulder, and Homo-like in the hands, feet, and size of the brain. Remember that though. The Australopithecine-like features, remember that because it's gonna come back way later. This discovery meant that Homo naledi was burying their dead, which is a type of behavior we assumed only large-brained species were capable of. Not this little guy. So did naledi have the capacity for abstract thinking, an awareness of life and death, memory, a sense of identity? It's unclear if this behavior came from social cooperation, emotional bonds, or learned traditions, but it forced us to reshape our way of thinking, of our assumptions of early human species. This was not an isolated incident. Marks on the wall and fragments of charred material suggested that they would illuminate their path going into the cave. They were capable of planning and using technology, similar to larger-brained species. Did they bury their dead because they understood death the way we do? Or was this driven by practical concerns, like keeping predators away from their living spaces? Very little is known about their everyday life. Its teeth differ from other Homo species who lived around the same time. They may have inhabited a distinct environment occupied by other Homo species, but it's unclear. And they have a brain capacity of 465 cubic centimeters. And the icon for Homo naledi, as you can see, is crossbones because of how many bones they found in that cave. Crazy. Dude, imagine. Dude, this reminds me of Ted the Caver or whatever that story is. Dude, imagine if in the cave. Wait, no. That wouldn't make sense. Never mind. It just makes me think about caves, man. Neanderthalensis, Homo neanderthalensis. This looks like someone's uncle, bro. This guy looks like... He's like, oh. Okay, Neanderthals are a real trip. A real delight. and they existed 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. It's sad. Many skeletons of Neanderthals bear the scars of violence. Fractured arms, shattered skulls, trauma consistent with parrying attack and blows to the head. Scientists first discovered Neanderthal bones in a limestone cave in Germany in 1856. Because they lived in colder climates, this could have given them more robust bodies and thicker bones, while their craniums retained the more primitive, long, low shape. Populations that had migrated into Europe adapted to the climate. They were powerfully built, shorter and stockier than us. They had wide rib cages, strong limbs, and large hands, built for gripping and tool making. Their skulls were elongated, their brows were pronounced, and their noses were broad. Adaptations that helped them warm and humidify the air of the Ice Age in Europe. Their brains were actually as big as ours. Well, sometimes even slightly bigger. Yeah, bigger. They had defining features of the skull, including the large middle part of the face, angled cheekbones, and a huge nose. So, another thing I forgot to mention with Homo naledi is that because we know that they were very intelligent, now we know that the size of the brain doesn't matter. When you're looking at like how intelligent something is, I think now it's like the size of the brain compared to the size of the body, right? Like the comparison of those two. So just because, Homo naledi had a small brain doesn't mean they were dumb. They were actually really freaking smart. Neanderthals were a lot smarter than we first thought. They were thinkers, artists, caretakers, and builders. They would shape stones into finely crafted points. They knew how to haft stone point onto wooden shafts, creating hunting spears. They even used fire-hardened wood as a weapon. There's evidence that suggests that they coordinated hunting groups and strategies, driving mammoths and other large animals into traps. They were symbolic thinkers. Archaeologists have found painted cave walls, collections of eagle talons and shells, which were most likely worn. Items not for survival, but for meaning. An interesting discovery in Iraq was that Neanderthals' remains carefully placed in a shallow grave surrounded by traces of pollen. It's debated if the flowers were placed deliberately on the grave, or if they somehow blew onto it. But the arrangement suggests a deliberate act. Other similar burials appeared, showing signs they laid their dead to rest. This shows they may have contemplated life and death, memory and meaning. They most likely possessed a language too. Their anatomy and genetic evidence strongly suggest that they were capable of complex vocal communication. They lived in small, close-knit groups and depended on each other for survival. Injured individuals were also cared for, showing empathy and mutual support. They shared food, raised children communally, and likely maintained networks of interaction with neighboring groups. Neanderthals made and wore clothing. Reindeer were available in the winter and red deer in the summer. There's also evidence that they exploited marine resources when they lived in coastal areas. Mollusks, seals, dolphins, and fish. Bro, imagine you're at home all day, your man has been lazy as fuck, barely putting food on the table, and your friend Lila's man brings home a fucking dolphin. Piss me off. Times must have been tough. Interestingly, some fractures in Neanderthals are similar to injuries among professional rodeo riders who regularly interact with larger dangerous animals. So that's why you're all banged up. That's why you're all banged up, is because you're out here doing whatever. They used tools for sewing, they controlled fire, lived in shelters. It's thought that tens of thousands of years went by before Neanderthals and modern humans made direct contact. Yeah, the distribution of modern humans could have prevented Neanderthals from expanding back into areas they once favorited, which could have resulted in their extinction. There's a term called competitive exclusion, which is an ecological principle stating that two species competing for the same limited resources cannot coexist indefinitely. So yeah, we really fucked up on that one. 1 to 4% of the genome of present-day people outside of Africa are inherited from Neanderthal ancestors. Some of us have Neanderthal DNA in us. They descended from my goat, Homo heidelbergensis. And genetic evidence shows that Neanderthals crossbred with modern humans multiple times. They also crossbred with Denisovans, genes that influence some present-day people's immune systems, skin, and ability to process certain nutrients. They are our closest extinct human relative. It wasn't until 40,000 years ago that they were gone. The cause of their death is still up for debate. Many people think Homo sapiens are the cause. A competition for resources caused their numbers to drop. Harsh climate also could have played a role, pushing Neanderthal groups past the point of recovery. Their location. They were found the Feldhofer Cave of the Neander Valley. And Tal, a modern form of Tal, means valley in German. So Neander Valley, Neanderthal. Some disturbing news, however, indicates that Neanderthals were cannibals. Probably not all of them, right? But this was unsettling to me, obviously, just this, because when you think about the incident, you're like, oh, wow. So let's talk about this. Archaeologists analyzed hundreds of Neanderthal bone fragments from a cave in Belgium. 6 Neanderthals had been cannibalized 45,000 years ago. The cannibals preferred to eat the women and children first. So, many of the Neanderthal bones had butchery marks found on them, similar to ones that we've seen on animal bones, suggesting someone had killed and eaten them. Researchers who dug through a collection of fragments determined that all of the butchered Neanderthals, small females and children, obviously we don't know why this happened. They determined that out of the 6, 4 were female adults or adolescents, and 2 were male children. The females were not related to one another. Female bones showed that they were more lightly built than the average Neanderthal female. The bones also revealed that the cannibalized individuals were born in a completely different region than where they died, which points to exocannibalism of one group by a different group. So, scientists explain that weaker members of one or multiple groups from a single neighboring region were deliberately targeted. The cannibals might have specifically sought to undermine the reproductive potential of a competing group. So this was premeditated, possibly. So it's unclear if the cannibals were Neanderthals or Homo sapiens, who were likely present in the area as well. The bones found in the cave were among the last Neanderthals in Europe, at a time when Homo sapiens had begun to arrive in their territory. This could have been the mistreatment of outsiders. It's unclear how the individuals ended up in the cave, but the scientists explain moving living people is much easier than moving dead people, dead bodies, or body parts. Neanderthals are represented mostly by leg bones. The individuals could have been brought alive, killed close to the cave, and the cannibalizing group deposited only selected body parts inside the chamber. Holy shit. Maybe that's how they disappeared, bro. I don't know. Making the rest of us looking great, I'll tell you that. I'm kidding. Obviously, this was not all of the Neanderthals. And it sounds like this one event happened at a time where Neanderthals were already declining in numbers. I guess times got hard, but still, holy shit. The icon, I chose it because they were all banged up. They said on all of their bones, they showed scars of violence. So that's why I put band-aids on them. Now, we're talking about Denisovans. They existed 287,000 to 30,000 years ago in the 2000s. Archaeologists in a cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia found a tiny fragment of bone. This tiny bone belonged to a girl who lived more than 40,000 years ago. The bone was not from a Homo sapien or a Neanderthal. A mystery. Once advanced genetic sequencing arrived, scientists were able to extract DNA from the bone. what they found was a completely unknown lineage of humans, the Denisovans. A few teeth, a fragment of a skull, and a piece of a long bone are all we have so far of Denisovans. On opposite day, we actually found a Denisovan skull in 2025. For the first time, we found a Denisovan skull, which is really exciting. In 2018, scientists sequenced the DNA of another bone fragment. It ended up belonging to a young girl whose mother was a Neanderthal and whose father was a Denisovan. This proves that Denisovans interbred with Neanderthals and modern humans. So 3 molars, a bone chip from a long arm or leg bone, 3 bone slivers, and a fragment of a finger bone. Other bones that contain proteins that were Denisovan, a jawbone, a molar, a rib fragment. The rib fragment is the most recent Denisovan on record, 32,000 to 48,000 years ago. The Dragon Man skull from China is a skull found by a Chinese laborer. He hid it well, and just before he died, he told his family about it. They found the skull in 2018 and donated it to the museum. In 2021, studies indicated the skull belonged to Homo longi, and in 2025, 2 new studies show that Dragon Man was actually a Denisovan. The skull is at least 146,000 years old and is one of the largest skulls of any known extinct human lineage. It had larger, almost square-like eye sockets, thick brow ridges, a wide mouth, and oversized teeth. It was right under our noses this entire time. The finger bone that was studied suggested that a 13-year-old girl had dark skin, brown hair, and brown eyes. She may have had a low forehead, a protruding jaw, and nearly no chin. Other than that, it's unclear what Denisovans looked like. Dragon skull brought us that much closer to the answer though. Denisovans split off from a different population in Asia. We still don't know much about how they lived. The stone artifacts found near Denisovan remains suggest they were skilled tool makers. Genetic evidence suggests they lived far beyond the Altai Mountains, possibly as far as Indonesia and the islands of Oceania, but it's uncertain, proving that the coexistence of several human species was not always a bad thing, not always a competition. Sometimes these species accepted each other. They lived from the cold mountains of Siberia and Tibet to the jungles of Southeast Asia. Findings from Denisovan sites indicate that they may have hunted and eaten deer, gazelles, horses, bison, woolly rhinoceroses. The Denisovan rib fragment was studied in 2024 and revealed that they butchered and ate a multitude of blue sheep, a species of goat. They also ate yaks, spotted hyenas, wolves, Tibetan foxes, snow leopards, golden eagles, and common pheasant. What the hell? So Denisovans were a sister group of the Neanderthals. The Denisovans spread eastward into Central, East, and Southern Asia. They thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. They interbred with Homo sapiens on several occasions. Many modern populations carry traces of Denisovan DNA in parts of Melanesia and New Guinea. As much as 5% of the genome can be traced back to Denisovans. Indigenous people of Australia, certain groups in Southeast Asia, some populations in East Asia, and people living on the Tibetan plateau all carry pieces of their genetic heritage. A crucial Denisovan gene helps people thrive in low oxygen, high altitude environments. They are called Denisovan because they were first discovered in a site known as Denisova Cave. The cave was used as recently as the 1700s by a hermit named Denis, which is where it got its name. The Cave of Denis in Russian. Dude, imagine being a fucking hermit living in a cave, and then that leads to an entire ancient human species being named after you. Fucking Denis, dude. I wish I could be like that. They'd be called the Ashley-Savins. Yeah, Ashley-Savins. That would be cool. Mad respect, Denis. It's estimated that the split between Neanderthals and Denisovans happened between 381,000 and 473,000 years ago. Denisovan genes are also shown to influence modern human immune systems, as well as fat and blood sugar levels. They may also increase the risk of neuropsychiatric disorders such as depression and schizophrenia. What? Oh. More research is needed to investigate this link. Well, who doesn't have that these days, you know what I mean? Before we talk about our present day humans, I wanted to include these two new human species really quick. While doing my main research, I hadn't heard or seen anything whose discoveries are relatively new. I just happened to come across this information while I was editing the script for this video, so let's get into those real quick. Christopher J. Bay, but I'm gonna call you Bay, from the University of Hawaii, and his team of paleoanthropologists have introduced Homo juluensis. I really hope that's how you pronounce it, because that's how I'm going to be pronouncing it. A newly identified hominin species. The name juluensis means big head. They are said to have thrived in Eastern Asia between 300,000 and 50,000 years ago. Juluensis fossils have features like large craniums with thick skulls, traits reminiscent of Neanderthals, as well as characteristics shared with modern humans and Denisovans. They are thought to have been skilled in toolmaking, processing animal hides, and hunting wild horses. This discovery suggests that Eastern Asia hosted these 4 distinct hominin species. In May 2024, as belonging to Denisovans were analyzed. Bay and Wu argued these fossils could also belong to juluensis. This is based on similarities in jaw and teeth structures among fossils from these regions. Emphasized that naming Homo juluensis will improve science communication. He says, this study clarifies a hominin fossil record that has tended to include anything that cannot easily be assigned to Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, or Homo sapiens. Although we started this project several years ago, we did not expect being able to propose a new hominin species and then to be able to organize the hominin fossils from Asia into different groups. Ultimately, this should help with science communication. And I have to agree with Bay. I'm not part of the science community by any means, but I agree. Now that we're on the topic, can someone send me to science school? But yes, instead of just lumping unexplainable fossils together, I agree that adding new things and being able to categorize things will make it easier to understand, because Homo erectus, my logo's literally a fucking puzzle because of what is going on. I agree that adding new terminology will help narrow things down, organize, and make things easier to understand. Homo juluensis helps support the idea of evolution in a complicated branching tree filled with diversity and hybridization, an intricate web. Homo juluensis hunted wild horses in small groups and made stone tools and possibly processed animal hides for survival before disappearing around 50,000 years ago. So that is one of the newer ones. Homo luzonensis is a new species discovered in the Philippines, in Calao Cave on the island of Luzon. Several teeth, finger, toe, and thigh bones were discovered, belonging to Homo luzonensis. They had a small body similar to Homo floresiensis, another island species. Its teeth are distinct from every other human species. Its fingers and toes are relatively longer than a modern human's. It's not clear how this species is related to others in the family tree. Its fossils date back to about 67,000 years ago, predating the earliest human presence in the Philippines by 40,000 years. Homo luzonensis must have reached the Philippines over water. It wasn't thought to be possible, but primitive human relatives left Africa and could have made it all the way to Southeast Asia. Professor Chris Stringer from London's Natural History Museum commented, after the remarkable finds of the diminutive Homo floresiensis were published in 2004, I said that the experiment in human evolution conducted of Flores could have been repeated on many of the other islands in the region. That speculation has seemingly been confirmed on the island of Luzon, nearly 3,000 kilometers away. So that's pretty awesome. The fossils are dated between 67,000 and 50,000 years ago. Belong to at least 3 adult and juvenile individuals. They have been recovered in excavations in the cave since 2007. Homo erectus has been thought to have been the first member of our direct line to leave Africa but the Australopithecine-like features could change the way we think about our ancestors. Remember when I said with Homo floresiensis, remember how they have Australopithecine-like features because this is gonna come back? Well, this is the moment it's coming back. Australopithecine-like species were able to reach Southeast Asia. It changes a lot. Since Luzon is only accessible by the sea, it raises questions as to how pre-human species got there. Homo floresiensis also has Australopithecine-like features, which adds to the mystery. Many argue that they descended from Homo erectus, but that some of their anatomy reverted to a more primitive state. Is this the case with Homo luzonensis? Matthew Tochery from Lakehead University in Canada, although not involved with the research, commented, explaining the many similarities that Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis share with early Homo species and Australopiths as independently acquired reversals to a more ancestral-like hominin anatomy owing to evolution in isolated island settings seems like a stretch of coincidence too far. Professor Chris Stringer, again a human evolution expert, says some scientists have questioned the wisdom of creating a new species, given the small sample of fossils. Others, including myself, wonder where the Luzon finds might be related to the already known Homo floresiensis. We know that islands' isolation can be a catalyst for some odd evolutionary changes, including reversions to apparently primitive states. Nevertheless, for the moment, it's probably reasonable to accept Homo luzonensis as a species while we await more finds. Homo luzonensis lived at least 130,000 years ago. Its name means human from Luzon, sometimes referred to as Luzon man or Kalau man. Homo luzonensis and Homo floresiensis could be related, but they could also be separate species that evolved independently, but both succumbed to island miniaturization. Some will argue that the primitive features of Homo luzonensis are evidence of a pre-Homo erectus dispersal out of Africa, perhaps more than 2 million years ago. Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis would represent some of the last survivors of that primitive early wave, lingering on at the fringes of the inhabited world. If this explanation turns out to be correct, it would even question whether these species really belong in the genus Homo. Holy moly, guys. I just discovered these two human species today. These articles have been published for years, but to me this is new. So, good job, guys. Scientists, good on you for sticking at it. You know what? No, I won't stop here. I thought, you know what? Let's see what other things have been discovered in the big year 2025. Let's go through 2025 discoveries. Human revolution, let's go. This is gonna be a bit jumbled, so I apologize. A February study investigated theory of mind, or the uniquely human trait of recognizing the cognitive sapience of others, which allows modern humans to communicate and coordinate to an extent not seen in other animals. Luke Townrow and his colleagues set up an experiment where bonobos received a food reward hidden under cups. They only received the food reward if they cooperated with their human partner and showed them where the food was first. Sometimes the bonobo could tell the human knew where the food was, and sometimes the bonobo could tell when the human didn't know where the food was. Bonobos pointed to the location of the hidden food more often and quicker if they knew the human was ignorant of the food's location. They could interpret the human's mental state and act accordingly. The hallmark theory of mind. An April study shows that apes share, especially when it comes to fermented fruit. The first recorded instance of fermented food sharing in chimpanzees was observed when at least 70 chimps of all ages shared fermented fruit. The fruit ranged between 0.1% and 0.61% alcohol by volume, which is probably not enough to get them sloshed. But either way, this shows that food sharing and fermented food consumption have deep evolutionary roots. An October study shows that chimps have complex decision-making processes. Chimps were presented with 2 boxes, one that contained food and one that was either empty or contained a non-food item. Chimps were allowed to choose a box twice. after receiving either weak or strong evidence about which box contained the food. The team found that chimps were able to revise their beliefs about the food's location in response to more convincing evidence. When they picked the wrong box after the weak hint, they switched to the correct box after a strong hint. Also, when they picked the correct box after a strong hint, they kept their selection after a weak hint. This shows the chimpanzee's ability to make rational decisions and even change decisions in response to learning new information. We learned more about Paranthropus this year too. Paranthropus consists of 3 species. Wait, I thought Paranthropus was not a genus. What are we doing here, guys? Whatever. We've already gone over these 3 species, and they're known for their large teeth and chewing muscles. An April study describes an articulated lower limb Swartkrans site in South Africa. They described a partial pelvis, femur, and tibia of an adult Paranthropus robustus, dating back 2.3 million to 1.7 million years ago. The anatomy of the hip, femur, and knee suggested that this individual was fully bipedal. They would have only been about 3 feet tall, one of the tiniest hominins on record. And in May, a study that investigated genetic variability in Paranthropus fossils helped identify the sex. Using proteins preserved in fossil tooth enamel, the team was able to identify 2 male and female individuals. The team also found that one of the individuals appeared to be more distantly related, which hints at microevolution within the species. Another study, published in October, described a Paranthropus Boise hand, which allowed scientists to learn if Paranthropus could have made stone tools. The nearly complete Paranthropus hand reveals a mostly hominin-looking morphology, strong musculature, and wide bones. The grasping capabilities of Paranthropus seems to converge with that of gorillas. They likely use this powerful grip to strip vegetation and process food rather than for climbing. It is hypothesized that nothing would have prevented Paranthropus Boise from making and using stone tools. This, added with other recent findings, as the ability to make and use complex tools is not limited to the genus Homo. So that's pretty wild. The Bertel foot dates to about 3.4 million years ago and was not given a species designation. In November, published research on other fossils from the same site include a new mandible with teeth links the hominin fossil Bertel to Australopithecus deiremida. Australopithecus deiremida. First time I'm hearing this. What species is that? Well, it's too late to cover it. The Bertel foot, completely different locomotor adaptations, and the foot still has an opposable big toe, like modern apes and the genus Ardipithecus. Australopithecus deiremida had primitive teeth and grasping feet, with isotopic evidence pointing to a plant-based diet, similar to that of an early species of Ardipithecus ramidus and Australopithecus anamensis. This shows that primitive traits persisted more recently into the timeline of human evolution than we previously thought, so that's cool. A study in August reports a small cluster of 30,000 years old stone artifacts were probably bundled in a container or pouch of perishable material. The 29 tools were made of different kinds of stone: flint, radiolite, chert, and opal. They were likely used for cutting, scraping, and drilling. The kit also included projectiles used for hunting. In November, toolmaking was reported in Kenya. That started about 2.75 million years ago. This contained one of the oldest and longest intervals of the making of Oldowan tools. In October, 3 pieces of ochre from Ukraine were described. These pieces were deliberately collected, shaped, engraved, polished, resharpened, and deposited there by Neanderthals up to 70,000 years ago. It's impossible to know what these pieces were used for, but the pointed tips suggest they were used to make linear marks. This suggests they had a symbolic or artistic function, which could have been used for identity expression, education, and transmitting knowledge across generations, so that's cool. They had like pencils and stuff. 2 studies in July shed light on Neanderthal eating habits. And I've learned enough, to be honest. Let's get into it. 25,000 years ago in Germany, Neanderthals processed at least 172 animals at the edge of a lake. Researchers call this the Fat Factory. As is theorized, this site was most likely a place where they extracted bone grease It is much older than previously documented. This extreme bone-bashing behavior had not been seen before at Neanderthal sites. Neanderthals transported the bones of antelope, deer, horses, and even elephants to the site for bone crushing. Some good bone crushing. A December study documented the earliest evidence of deliberate making from the 400,000-year-old site of Barnum in England. They found heated sediments, fire-cracked flint hand axes, and fragments of iron pyrite, a mineral used to strike sparks with flint, likely brought to the site from far away. Later in July, a study suggests that Neanderthals ate as much protein as other ancient hypercarnivores, which is interesting. Humans and our earlier relatives can only eat a certain amount of protein without getting protein poisoning. A possible cause of this is maggots. When an animal dies, maggots feed on the decaying flesh. If Neanderthals were eating these nitrogen-enriched maggots, feeding on muscle tissue and dried and or cached dead animals, that could explain their unusually high nitrogen values. Reading this article unlocked a memory of mine, a very personal memory. I was a child. I was hunting with my father and grandfather deep in the woods. We came across the rotting carcass of a moose. I think it was a moose, was it? I think it was because it was really bigger than a deer. It could have been a deer, but I remember a moose, I don't know. And we went up to it, and there were maggots. So many. I've never seen anything like it. I think it kind of traumatized me. It was a sea of maggots just moving around. Ugh, so gross. But that just made me think of that time just now. So imagining a Neanderthal seeing that, fuck, I'm gonna eat that. Gagged. Literally. A study in January looked at carbon and nitrogen isotopes in the teeth of Australopithecus from South Africa. They found a low ratio, suggesting they were not consuming much meat. This means that carnivory was not a major factor shaping our evolution. Studies this year focused on early evidence for hominins in Europe, reported cut marks on several animal bones from a site in Romania, dating back to at least 1.95 million years ago. They compared these cuts with other sets and confirmed the cuts were made with stone tools. This is now among the earliest evidence that hominids had spread to Eurasia during that time. In March, the earliest hominin face fossil from Western Europe was reported. The fossil was dated between 1.4 and 1.1 million years ago. Found in Spain. The shape of the left half of the face fossil is more similar to Homo erectus, which had not been documented in Europe. The fossil's nickname is Pink, a nod to Pink Floyd's album The Dark Side of the Moon, which in Spanish means hidden face. We already talked about the Denisovan skull that was found and confirmed to be Denisovan, but a study from April described a new Denisovan mandible belonging to a male individual dredged up from the coast of Taiwan. This discovery expands the range of Denisovans. In September, a cranium from China into 1 million years ago was reconstructed and described. The crushed and warped fragments closely aligned with the Homo longi group. The analysis changes the perspective of late hominin divergence, with Homo longi and Homo sapiens having sister taxa to the exclusion of Neanderthals, and all three groups having evolutionary origins 2 to 3 times older than previously thought, 1.2 million years ago. What are we talking about? A handful of teeth in Ethiopia suggest diverse species of human relatives unlike any seen before were roaming the area 2.6 million years ago. 13 teeth were discovered and are estimated to be 2.63 million years old. They do not belong to either Australopithecus afarensis or Australopithecus garhi, the two species known in that area. The teeth don't have any unique features and are not in a skull. The new species does not have an official name. Researchers are calling it Lediguraru Australopithecus. Lediguraru is the site the teeth were found. That could be something, guys. In that same study, 2 teeth were found that are 2.59 million years old, and one that is 2.78 million years old. All of them belong to the genus Homo, which makes them some of the earliest remains emerging. This means that at least 3 archaic human relatives were living in this region of Ethiopia around 2.5 million years ago. Guys, I gotta change my timeline. Hundreds of stone tools discovered in Kenya suggest our ancient relatives had a high degree of forward planning 600,000 years earlier than experts previously thought. Researchers looked at more than 400 stone tools from the site dated to 3 to 2.6 million years ago. The tools were not likely made by our genus. They were fairly basic. The stones that were used to make them came from locations more than 6 miles away, suggesting an excellent ability to plan ahead. Long before our genus Homo arose, Shet, in July, a 1.8 million year old jawbone from Homo erectus was discovered in the Republic of Georgia. So that's kind of cool. Stone tools were discovered on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, suggesting that either Homo erectus or an unknown human relative reached Oceania nearly 1.5 million years ago. This matches up with previous evidence that Homo erectus arrived on the island of Java around 1.6 million years ago. Since no skeletal remains have been found yet, it is unclear if the toolmaker was Homo erectus. It could have also been Homo floresiensis, which has been found on neighboring islands. In November, published research shows that Homo sapiens reached Australia 60,000 years ago, likely from 2 different routes through the Western Pacific. This feat requires expert knowledge of watercraft and sailing. This DNA evidence supports archaeological evidence, which was stone tools and pigments on cave walls. However, because some indigenous Australians have Neanderthal DNA, this suggests that Australia wasn't populated until about 50,000 years ago. So, who knows? 50,000 years ago, Homo floresiensis became extinct. In December, a published study suggests that drought was the cause of the extinction. While studying the rainfall on floors, it was discovered that it declined considerably between about 76,000 and 61,000 years ago, and that the population of the stegodon, relative to elephants, disappeared around 50,000 years ago. Researchers believe decreased rainfall and the reduction of the stegodon population made life more difficult for the hobbits. If modern humans reached floors, the pressure of competition may have wiped them out too. In August, researchers announced that some people with indigenous American ancestry carry Denisovan genes, likely passed on through Neanderthals who mated with modern humans. Scientists discovered that 1 in 3 Mexicans alive today has a version of the MUC19 gene similar to Denisovans, and that it likely hitched a ride from Neanderthals. This is the first time scientists have found a Denisovan gene in humans that came from Neanderthals. It's unclear what the Denisovan gene does, but researchers think it must have been beneficial to the earliest Americans for it to be preserved in the human genome. So, that's crazy. In August, researchers announced that a handful of 300,000-year-old teeth suggested human and Homo erectus. They have interbred in China, bro. What is up with the interbreeding, bro? What? I don't know why I'm making a deal out of it. It's not that big of a deal. Really, everybody just saw each other as people because that's what we are. I just think it's so weird because before this, I didn't even know how many species of human there were. And when you put words like interbreeding in there, it makes me feel like they're cousins or something. I don't know. But let's ignore that. Moving on. The teeth had an unusual combination of ancient features, like thick molar roots, and modern features, like small wisdom teeth. This could mean 2 different species were sharing that gene. Sharing their genes, bro. They're sharing. In March, researchers announced that Neanderthal, modern humans, and a 3rd mysterious lineage lived alongside another in caves in what is now Israel around 130,000 years ago. The Homo groups may have mixed and mingled for 50,000 years, potentially sharing cultural practices in addition to genetic material. Bro, we gotta straighten this out. How many species of humans were there? I am so mad. I spent so much time on my graph. Now I gotta change it. Damn it. In November, DNA study of humans' arrival in Australia suggests that along the way, these early human pioneers likely interbred with 1 or more archaic human groups, such as Homo longi, Homo luzonensis, or Homo floresiensis. There's more interbreeding. When will it end? In July, scientists found that the genes for lighter skin, lighter hair, and lighter eyes emerged among Europeans only about 14,000 years ago. And until 3,000 years ago, most Europeans had dark skin, hair, and eyes. 348 samples of ancient human DNA from archaeological sites spread throughout Western Europe and Asia were analyzed. The first humans to reach Europe around 50,000 years ago carried genes for dark complexions. Once lighter traits emerged, they appeared only sporadically in the genetic data until fairly recently. By about 1000 BC, those lighter traits became widespread in Europe. It's still unclear if lighter skin, hair, and eyes had any sort of evolutionary advantage for early Europeans. That shit's crazy. So what are we fighting for? We gotta bring this to the general public because racism, so we're the weird ones. I think we all need to hear this. We were not supposed to be white. No, I'm just kidding. Why did that happen? I didn't know that was a thing. Did you guys know that? Guess I never really thought about it. Where it all started, where did it come from? Comment down below why this happened. Anyway, that is a wrap on Discoveries from 25. Now we can continue. And we are now moving on to Homo sapiens. This video is going to be so long. Holy freaking moly, I hope it's worth it. I hope you're all learning a lot. I hope we are all human evolution experts like Chris Stringer by the end of this video. Holy shit. Homo sapiens. Now, it is said, allegedly, Homo sapiens emerged 300,000 years ago. We have modern human characteristics like a globular brain case, subtle brow ridge, pointy chin. Expansion and rounding of the brain case is especially significant. It reflects a reorganization of the brain, visual and spatial integration, memory, and social cognition. Now, 70,000 years ago, we began colonizing the world. 40,000 years ago, we were the only species left. Now, we began to leave Africa around 70,000 years ago when we carried fire to frozen lands with us. We crafted tailored clothing and planned seasonal migrations. We tracked stars to navigate across vast distances and read subtle signs in the landscape to find water in aid regions. Our brains had become rewired. Neural pathways multiplied, connecting regions responsible for memory, emotions, planning, and creativity. We designed specialized points for hunting different animals. We combined materials, blending stone to wood with resins and sinew to create spears and axes. We fashioned needles from bone to stitch hides into clothing suited for cold nights and distant migration. We carved patterns into ochre and etched designs into bone, strung shell into necklaces, and painted the walls of caves with images of animals, hunts, and spirits. We built complex social networks. We shared knowledge widely, teaching anyone who would listen. We created myths and stories that explain the forces of nature and bound communities together through shared beliefs. Instead of changing to fit the environment, we reshaped the environment itself. Once we left Africa and came upon other human species, sometimes it was okay. We didn't always compete with them. We shared food, knowledge, and even blood. Homo sapiens interbred with Denisovans and Neanderthals, and apparently maybe Homo erectus, Homo luzonensis, whatever. Dude, we probably interbred with everybody at this point. Because of all this knowledge we have of our past, we understand now that evolution was not a straight line. It is a branching, intertwining process, more complex than we ever thought. Who knows what we haven't discovered yet, and how it will change everything we thought we knew about our history. 315,000 years ago, there was a transitional hominin, possibly from Neanderthals to Homo sapiens. Possibly. Also, what's crazy is there was a time where we almost went extinct. Scientists studying the human genome discovered evidence of ancient bottlenecks. Bottlenecks are periods when our global population shrank to such a small size that genetic diversity nearly vanished. The range variation in our DNA is surprisingly narrow compared to many other species. This genetic uniformity is a clue to how close we came to becoming extinct. This bottleneck can be tied to a single event, an event that possibly reduced humanity's numbers to just a few thousand individuals. 74,000 years ago, what is now the Indonesian island of Sumatra, a volcano erupted. It was one of the largest volcanic events in the past 2 million years. More than 2,000 cubic kilometers of ash and debris exploded into the atmosphere, It carved a caldera more than 60 miles across, which is now Lake Toba. The aftermath of this eruption was devastating. The sunlight dimmed, global temperature dropped, ecosystems collapsed. Many plant species died, which caused surviving herbivores to die, which caused surviving predators to die. So where did that leave us? Some studies estimate that humanity's global population may have fallen fewer 10,000 individuals. That's it? Dude, Vineyard, Utah has 11,500 people. Imagine that being all that's left. Crazy shit. You have shit in Vineyard, Utah. Leaving small, isolated groups scattered across Africa and parts of Southern Asia were all that remained. Surprisingly, this was not the only near extinction-inducing event for humanity. Around 135,000 years ago, a series of climate shifts caused a significant population crash. Genetic evidence suggests that Homo sapiens may have dwindled to a few thousand individuals. This is what caused a reduced genetic diversity. Natural selection favored adaptability, cooperation, and problem solving. And so here we are. I don't know, I feel like our luck is about to run out. To what end? To what end? So, over time, brains got bigger, teeth got smaller, used tools to defend and hunt. We started eating more meat in the Homo genus. Lower portion of the face is flatter. Cheeks are less flared. Reshaping was done with the reduction of the chewing apparatus. Canines. The confusing muddle in the middle is complicated because there are multiple species of ancient humans who existed at the same time. It's hard to track and place each fossil quickly on a timeline. There is only one species of humans left today, Homo sapiens. It's kind of sad. It is sad to me, not gonna lie. 12,000 years ago, climate warmed and settled. Species settled. Humans began experimenting with growing crops, keeping livestock, and producing their own food. Villages, towns, and cities were built. I learned something else interesting. Our brains got bigger until 13,000 years ago, and they actually got smaller. Basically because our jaws got smaller, so did our skulls. Our jaws don't grow as big as they used to. Weird. So now where do we stand? Bigfoot came from evolution, then where along the way did he develop into what he is today? Because human evolution is a theory itself, there's not one solid theory. I'll tell you that. I went through a Reddit thread to see what other people's theories are, because I don't have thoughts of my own. So let's read those. My hypothesis is it is either some unknown Dryopithecine ape or a hominin closer to us than to other apes. The Gigantopithecus hypothesis seems unlikely considering they were specialist herbivores. Theory would be something that has stood up to scientific testing. We're at the hypothesis point. Hypothetically, a small population of bipedal primates could have crossed the Bering Land Bridge the same way people did a few thousand years ago. That would leave no fossil record dating back millions of years. There are no fossilized human remains in North America either. But we know humans got here because they were waiting on shore when the Europeans got off the boat. It's possible a small breeding population of these undiscovered primates survived up until recent times by staying isolated in remote areas. For instance, there was an uncontacted Aboriginal tribe roaming Australia until the 1980s. The Pintupi Nine were so isolated that they had no knowledge of clothing or even sugar. They were only discovered when they voluntarily sought out contact with established settlements. If a breeding group of humans could survive in a developed country like Australia through modern times, why couldn't a small band of relatively intelligent primates survive undiscovered in North America? There's really no evidence to support any specific theory. Personally, I think that descriptions of the creature suggest more of a non-human ape that independently evolved bipedalism. It has features not present in hominins, such as a sagittal crest, mid-tarsal break, and seems to have a walking style different to Homo sapiens' bipedal gait. Either that or descended from much more distant human ancestors. I like the idea that they, like many other large mammals from the Ice Age, have grown larger, hairier, and more robust to survive in the harsh, cold climate of North America. Basically, Bigfoots would be woolly apes, like the woolly mammoth or woolly rhinoceros. There's no one theory, That's what everybody says, bro. Many posters here, though, fall into the category of those who think it's most likely that big feet evolved from one or another form of early man. Let's say Homo erectus. The idea that they branched off from Homo erectus and evolved their large size spread pretty much all over the world and have never gone extinct, retaining many early man features. This explains both their similarity to humans and their differences from humans. People cite a variety of candidates for the ancient common ancestor of modern man and Bigfoot, but it might also be something we haven't found any fossils for. As soon as Gigantopithecus became well known, a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon as the obvious explanation for Bigfoot based solely on the fact the size was right. That bandwagon, though, has lost a lot of momentum and many have jumped off. People are realizing that it isn't necessary that the ancient starting point for Bigfoot was already physically very large. There has been plenty of time for it to evolve into a larger creature. Now, the social experiment I tried to do earlier with you guys, the parasocial social experiment, there was a Reddit thread on here that I saw, and someone had 4 pictures, I think, and they were asking people who had encounters with Bigfoot which one looked more like it. So these are replies. Now, they only had 4 photos, but I had a ton. So let's just read through some comments under that thread. I only had brief glimpses of what I saw, and I frankly tried to forget about it as it was terrifying to see. I was 13 at the time, and it gave me nightmares. The second time I saw it, it was dark outside, and I caught it in my flashlight beam. My focus was on the virulent neon green eyes rather than its figure. Whatever it was hateful, and I felt like it peered into my soul. I don't ever want to see it again unless I'm armed. So although the specifics of what I saw are hard to pin down, I can say that from what I've researched, most people describe something similar to Homo erectus or Homo heidelbergensis. Round head, relatively human-like features, human-like feet, etc. Most of the features Sasquatch possesses are very human-like. Although I respect his work, after Dr. Krantz promoted the idea that Sasquatch is a Gigantopithecus, most people seemingly assume ape-like, potentially causing people's interpretation of their encounters to be contaminated. Memories are fluid, and if someone convinces you that what you saw had to have looked a certain way, you are likely to subconsciously edit your memories, especially ones made when fear and adrenaline are in your system. If the Keruidi Mastodon site is legitimate, then it's possible something like Homo erectus was in North America long before the Native Americans. No evidence for species like Gigantopithecus, Australopithecus, or Paranthropus have, to my knowledge, been found in North America. Their skulls would also stand out as different as would DNA and eDNA tests. But Homo erectus, they would likely blend in far more easily. Food for thought. I don't think we know for sure if Homo erectus, at least the earlier version around 2 million years ago, was hairless. This has been a question of mine regarding Bigfoot and whether it could be a branch of Homo erectus. From the reading of scientific literature I have done, when our human ancestors lost the body hair is not totally clear. One I read recently is that the time period is between 800,000 to 2 million years ago. So that wide range definitely could mean Homo erectus was hairy like Bigfoot, at least the earlier archaic Homo erectus. Some studies pulled from the human lice indicates the lice evolved around 2 million years ago, but another study from human genetics indicate that body hair was lost as recently as 800,000 years ago. There were a lot of changes with Homo erectus over the 2 million years of its existence. It's not like Australopithecus just instantly turned into erectus. There will be a significant overlap and gradual transition from the earlier species to the Homo erectus. I am guessing erectus was more archaic the first few 100,000 years when it began migrating out of Africa, and a side branch of it retained its hair after it got into colder climates like Siberia. The Homo erectus from 2 million years ago versus the Homo erectus from 200,000 years ago most likely look drastically different from one another, just like how different Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo heidelbergensis look from each other, and we only diverged some 500,000 to 1 million years ago. Erectus has been around for 2 million years, more than double that. Indeed, some subspecies of Homo erectus subspecies. What? Indeed, some subspecies of Homo erectus subspecies may have been hairy. However, the main Bigfoot type has a sagittal crest, ape-like neck, and shoulder structure and longer arms, which are not traits Homo erectus had. Yet I now found out here a lot of people are seeing hairy Homo erectus / Heidelbergensis / archaic sapiens rather than the typical ape-like hominid. I knew there were at least 2 different species lumped together as relict hominids, but I believed in USA there was pretty much just the ape-like type. I think the ape-like shoulders is actually a combination of a well-built physique and bad posture. If you practice standing up straight in the mirror, your neck will be prominent and you don't look anything like a Sasquatch. However, no Sasquatch I've ever heard of had a good posture. They are always slumped over. If you do the same thing, bring your head down to your chest and lean forward, you can imitate that appearance. Add massive shoulder muscles as seen on someone like Brian Shaw, and you have a Sasquatch. Adaptation could cause the shoulders to become wider, and survival of the fittest could cause only those with the longest arms to survive, as they could climb rock faces or steep terrain more easily than those with shorter arms. I think the sagittal crest as seen on Patty may actually be a trichelemal cyst over her scalp. If it goes undiagnosed, it would become quite large. They can become painful if they rupture on their own, if you try to pop them, or they start to press down on your skull, or if it gets whacked by a tree branch. If it was painful, maybe that was a distraction to her senses, and hence why she was caught on camera. Bro, who are you and why are you— oh, he's still going. Can't describe a round skull like ours and not a sagittal crest. It appears like researchers may fill in the void with eyewitness encounters by assuming that someone is referring to a sagittal crest when they say it had a tall forehead or a large forehead. We as human beings can have a tall or large forehead. Even then, that detail isn't always shared. Just my 2 cents. Bro, you gave us 50 cents. You gave us 50 fucking cents. That was the— okay. But why are you hunched over in the mirror? Is what I'm wondering. Why are you practicing Bigfoot stances in the mirror? Research? Hey, I'm not— you know what, let's just move on. This is really interesting. If you are right and your ideas accurately describe what is there, do you think the resulting Bigfoot would be a Homo sapiens subspecies from an early OOA event, having evolved back body hair, massive body build, long arms, and having grown much taller, or rather a more primitive Homo species, for example the Asian erectus, having evolved that same way but starting with more primitive face traits? How big do you think is its cranial capacity relatively to its size? To measure the encephalization level of a mammal, the formula is brain weight in kilograms divided by body weight to the power of 0.66 times 100. Bro, no one is— so for Homo sapiens, we have 1.35 divided by 70 to the power of 0.66 times 100 is around 8. Hominids progress from a little more than 3 to 8. Shit, dude. It would be the latter option. Something like Homo erectus, in my opinion. I have yet to do the math. None of us have. But a creature that maxes out at 8.5 to maybe 9 feet in height as a fully grown male. Most sightings I've read and heard of, even in Alaska where a larger body would make sense, describe a 7 to 8 foot tall creature. The skull that could potentially reach the size of a large man like Angus Macaskill is a possibility in my eyes. Why are you bringing up all these people? Who's Brian Shaw? Who's Angus Macaskill? Who are these people that you're bringing into this Bigfoot conversation? Do they know about this? Do they know about this that you're using them as a reference for Bigfoot? Do they know this? I have yet to find any data about what his cranium size was, let alone the capacity. Unfortunately, the skull size of a Bigfoot could very well be smaller and closer to your average man though. Numerous sightings detail very wide shoulders and a comparatively small skull. Angus Macaskill was a very large man and his head was quite large. The brain is very complicated and it draws quite a bit of resources. So in an environment where food is a little harder to come by, the brain staying at a reasonable size can make sense. Lord, let's keep going. Yes, but keep in mind that a species growing or shrinking in size to survive is not unheard of. If only the tallest members can fight off or scare off predators, and the larger members survive cold weather more easily, then they would be the most likely to survive, and therefore would pass their genetics on. Whereas the smaller members of the species would be targeted by predators like the Smilodons, American lions, and the giant short-faced bears, etc., that existed until fairly recently here in North America. Australopithecus, Paranthropus, and other candidates are also quite short. Gigantopithecus could very likely be more like a quadrupedal gorilla than the bipedal ape Dr. Krantz envisioned, and we don't know much about Meganthropus. Homo erectus matches a lot of the bullet points and possibly has evidence that ties it to the Americas. Homo georgicus had the closest face to the one I saw. Well, the closest adult face. I didn't really look at the faces of the younger one's faces that much. She was a female, very much looking like the one from the Patterson-Gimlin footage. She was carrying a nursing baby and had whatever you would call a toddler of their species walking up in front of her. She was around 7 feet tall or close to it, medium brown fur covering most of her body. She was crossing the road in front of my car, moving at a brisk pace. It was over fairly fast because she and her children disappeared into the trees fairly quickly after crossing the road. Southeast Idaho. I've never written about it before that reply. I've read a number of Bigfoot stories about sightings. From what I've seen, Idaho sightings are rare, as are family sightings. I guess I was just lucky. I wonder if maybe they were on a migratory trip, because I've read the theory that Sasquatch migrate to different locations through the seasons. Do you mean face-wise? Because as far as the overall look goes, none of them really look like the ones that I saw. Not enough hair, not long enough hair, and not the right color. The ones I saw had shaggy, dense red hair all over their bodies, almost the same color as dead pine needles. The fourth is the closest to the face shape, but the mouth was a bit broader. The one I saw didn't have hair around most of their face. Makes me think it was a she, but the hair needs to be thick and long, and a mix of brown and mossy greens mixed with mud and forest litter. What are you talking about? You were not the first picking Homo up against us. I thought everyone would have picked one or two. What you saw may have been a hairy wild man, which is something genetically close to man or even fully human, but hairy as much as Bigfoot. They can even produce fertile offspring with humans. How do you know that? Those tribes of people have been historically found in various areas of modern-day Russia. Oh, my bad. Central Asia and Mongolia. Yet they were rumored to exist also in America. After 1967, the ape-like type cryptid known as Bigfoot took over and they were forgotten. However, even today, some people tell the Bigfoot they saw looked strikingly human. How much hairy over the body and tall was he? What was it doing? See, wild man is what Bigfoot has always been known as amongst my native people and other tribes here in North America. So to me, it's tomato. If I'd have seen one that looked like a 2, it likely would have been a much more aggressive encounter. Those are wood boogers, a more feral breed, and they'll try to run you out if they feel you're trespassing. As for height for reference, I saw it as a kid with my grandfather. My grandfather was all of 6'2" and nearly 300 pounds of Vietnam combat veteran, mechanic, and woodsman. This thing made him look small. As for how hairy it was hairy all over from what I could tell, which was hard to do. The way this one moved and how its hair was just covered in the brush, you wouldn't know where to see it unless it moved. And even then, you'd just catch a small part. But it was looking right at me, and my grandpa knew exactly what it was doing. It was sizing me up to grab me. They take kids, either to raise among them or eat. So my grandfather took me by my shoulder, and he calmly hurried us out back along the trail, keeping it in his awareness till we got back to the house. Scary. Some witnesses will tell you they look very ape-like. Others will say these creatures look so human that it's a little bit unnerving. Descriptions also vary depending on the region. Since we've never studied a Bigfoot and therefore have no frame of reference, we can't know for sure what they're supposed to look like. You know what? As a side note, please don't judge the validity of eyewitness testimony or forensic sketches based on how human or ape-like the description is. We can't even determine whether we're dealing with a hominin or hominid at this point. I wonder if our perceptions are a little skewed based on superficial differences though. It wasn't too long ago that a lot of white people actually thought black people might be a different species than humans because they look different. You see the same thing with great apes and monkeys. Despite chimpanzees and gorillas being much more closely related to humans than they are to monkeys, many people just see all primates, excluding humans, as all just monkeys. I think all the hair gives people the impression that Bigfoots are just apes, but I bet if all that hair was gone, they would appear much more human to us. Just look at pictures of the people that have the hair condition, where their entire bodies, including their face, are covered in thick, long hair. Superficially, they appear to look like an ape or other species, but these people are 100% human and are no different than the rest of us, other than the hair. I imagine if there was a relic species of Homo like the Neanderthal or Homo erectus, and they were covered in hair like Bigfoot, people would think they looked ape-like too. Bro, what are you on about? Oh, jeez. Now that we've gone through all of those theories, all of the evidence, do you think Bigfoot came from human evolution? Comment down below your thoughts on the Bigfoot human evolution theory or hypothesis. Someone yelled at us earlier. We are not in the theory stage, we're in the hypothesis stage, guys. If you have any stories you want me to share, don't be shy. We all share around here. I'll have my contact information in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more from me, like, comment, and subscribe. And hype the video so that it gets more attention. That would really help me out. Hit that notification bell if you want to be notified the next time I post a video. And stay safe. Stay open-minded. I'll see you when I see you. Bye. Maybe this. How about this? Pretty sure this is the same guy from earlier, I'm not gonna lie. Pretty sure we got duplicates here, but that's what it's like when your research is, not a lot of, options here. It's giving... How about this one? It's giving... You know, this really doesn't help because I have automatonophobia. I don't know how to pronounce it. I am so afraid of like dolls and mannequins. Like, why are their eyes so real? I don't like that at all. What about this guy? So yeah, because of that fear, I've been feeling nauseous while researching this. Just because they're so freaking realistic and it's like, it's scary. What about this guy? What about this guy? And him? Take your time. What about him? What about that? Why are the eyes so realistic? The old guy from, Breaking Bad, the uncle or whatever, like in the wheelchair who blows up Gus. Spoilers. How about this guy? Him? Perhaps? Not, okay, never mind. Perhaps him. Him?